Are we recording, Ms. Konecki? Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Mr. Zarzecki, can you please call roll?
Okay. Ms. Chick?
Janet Chick, President, Northfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Mr. Dwyer?
President, Northfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Mr. Gustafson?
President, Northfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Mr. Iaquinto? Mr. Iaquinto is not responding. Ms. Infante?
Here, Washtenaw County, Northfield Township, Michigan.
Mr. Roman?
Here, Northfield Township, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
And Zarzecki, present, Washtenaw County, Michigan.
Thank you. I make a motion we adopt the agenda.
Second.
So moved.
Supported by Mr. Iaquinto. Can you please note Mr. Iaquinto is present, Mr. Zarzecki?
Washtenaw County, Sam Iaquinto. Thank you. Present.
Thank you.
Yes, I will put him on the list.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Call to the public, Ms. Konecki.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we will have a general call to the public for items on the agenda. I do just want to say at the outset here, we have 2 public hearings on the agenda. So if you wish to comment on one of those specific cases, it might be better to hold your comments until we get to those public hearings, as it helps us keep better records for those cases. But if you wish to address the Planning Commission at this time, please use the raise hand function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen, or if you've dialed in, you can use *6. And when I acknowledge you and promote you so you can address the Planning Commission, please first give your name and address before beginning to give your comments. And just to respect everyone's time, we do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. So at this time, is there anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission? Okay, I'm going to start with Mark Braun.
Hello, I'm Mark Braun, 5510 Helner Road, Ann Arbor. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to say that I've recently come to my attention the proposed development on the corner up there on North Territorial, and just like to raise my own personal objections to the density. As I understand it, it doesn't seem in line with what I understood the master plan for our township to be, and just not in favor of that kind of development, that scope, that many people living so densely near where I've established my home here. It wasn't the way I envisioned my life to work out in the township. So with respect, I'd just like to offer my own objections to accepting the plan as I understand it from the developers. And also I would ask that, again, with all due respect, I may have missed something that I'm not aware of in terms of how you may have raised awareness throughout the population in the township to this proposal. And if I have missed that, I apologize in advance. But it seems to me from my knowledge that you've done what you should do, the bare minimum though. And something as extensive as this, I would hope that you would really strongly consider doing everything you can do so that you yourselves realize that all or most of us in the township are aware of the plan, so that we can help guide you in a way that best represents all of us. I'm sure you've done your due diligence and done what's legally responsible. And I would just ask that you do more, maybe to consider a mailing or whatever methods you think would be better served in order for yourselves to be sure that all of us are informed so that we can make a decision as a group. So thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mark. All right, next up is Francine Dolins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. And thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to follow up on Mark's comments because my initial comments to this meeting is also about the fact that residents do not get sufficient notice about rezoning and development in our township. And it's not that you have all not done your due diligence, as he said, you absolutely have. But the question is, what should you do when there is such a huge change in our environment? So 15 days notice is not enough time for residents to research and come up with any kind of counter arguments about developments. And that is compared to when the developers have years to discuss these issues with township officials. And there's a lack of notice to the entire community, which is what Mark was commenting on. And even though he doesn't live 300 feet from the planned development, at least I don't think so from his address, all township residents should receive a notice about each development because it affects them. And this would be a minimal cost to the township because the developments of this scale will affect people not just 300 feet away, but miles away. And generally, there's a lack of public input for longer periods of time at these public meetings. So there should be a series of meetings about developments such as these when they're so extensive and will change our environment to such a degree. And 3 minutes at a meeting like this is not sufficient in balance to what residents will lose or what they might gain in this kind of situation. So it really doesn't matter what the state rules are. I think that our township should think about what are the rules of decency for our neighbors and our residents in terms of what input can they have in these situations. And I believe that I forgot to give my address, so I'll do that right now. It is 350 North Territorial Road West, Ann Arbor. Thank you.
Francine. Okay, next up we have Stephen Sherman.
Hey everyone, hope you can hear me. This is Stephen Sherman. I live at 5221 Pontiac Trail in Northfield Township. Really not a ton to add to Francine and Mark's comments. I just want to call in to share personal objections to a development like this. It's a big reason I moved to Northfield Township was the rural open character and proximity to Ann Arbor. And I think a lot of the residents really appreciate and enjoy and respect the natural beauty. And a development like this just seems very opposed to the unique character we've been able to maintain in the township, as well as the master plan and vision, which I did read before moving here and was part of the reason that sold me on calling this township home. So yeah, I really just wanted to share personal objections on this development. I think there's plenty of other townships that already have developments and zoning like this, not that far away. Canton certainly comes to mind. I think maintaining what keeps Northfield unique and beautiful is far worth more than the additional housing tax revenue that comes from what I'm envisioning as a very generic development like this on a beautiful piece of property. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up is Rachel Elizabeth Pricer. This request came to us through the Q&A chat, just in case you weren't seeing her hand raised. Rachel, are you there?
Hello. I just adding on to voicing my concerns. I live further down Territorial off of Earhart, so not directly next to the planned development, but still concerning based on an infrastructure input, since I already, pre-COVID, when everyone was driving to work, rush hour sit times on the highway could be up to 45 minutes. There's a lot of cars to add all of a sudden, since it's condos and very dense. That's kind of overnight people showing up in Whitmore Lake and Northfield Township. I've lived in Whitmore Lake for quite a while, and the traffic there is really no better. So it's concerning that the development is going through without considering all the changes that will need to be made. And like previous speakers have said, I think we all love living here because it has a little more rural character. I would hate to see Territorial especially become a busy highway-like road because we've added 1,000 cars all of a sudden to a neighborhood that wasn't ready for that level of population.
Can I have your address, please?
Oh, 4294 Linden Lane,
What city?
Ann Arbor.
Thank you, Rachel. Is that all?
Yep.
All right. All right, up next is Suzie, I'm going to fumble this, Wienckowski.
Yes, you actually did pretty well. It's Wienckowski. Thanks. I'm at 5558 Hellner Road. And I also have some strong concerns about this proposal for the rezoning. It seems to me a very significant change from the current zoning and even from what is envisioned in the master plan. The density of the proposed development, the inclusion of apartments seems much more suited to a location closer to town or to another large subdivision. It seems to me very out of place to what other people were describing as our beautiful open countryside here. This area is primarily large lot residential, so one house on 2 acres or one house on 1 acre would be much more in keeping with the surrounding areas. We are the ones who are in control of what we want in our township. And there was a lot of effort from our public officials and a lot of input from the community to develop the master plan and what we envisioned for different areas in our township. And this just seems a huge departure from those visions. The public response in the past to these types of very large developments has been vocal and strongly in favor of something much more modest and preserving the beautiful countryside. So I would ask you to please consider rejecting this proposal in its current form and work together with the developer to move forward with something that's more in the nature of this part of the township and that matches the wishes of the majority of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzie. And while I move on to the next person, I noticed some people are putting a request to address the commission down in the Q&A. I am monitoring that, but if you could also, go down to the bottom of the screen and find that raise hand function, or it might be next to your name if you open your attendee list, depending on your screen view. That'll help me make sure everyone gets a chance to address the planning commission. So next up is Joanne Pearson.
Thank you. So I won't take a lot of your time. Joanne Pearson, 5756 Earhart Road, Northfield Township, and my husband, Jerome Pearson, is here with me as well. And we basically concur with all of the previous speakers. We do not think this development is in line with what the residents want, particularly the residents who live around it, as many have spoken already. We are 4 miles away, but I live around farms and I don't want to live around that kind of density. We've been here 20 years. And so I would ask one that well, first of all, I would love if you just, didn't go with this dense plan. But I'm not sure that the residents, as Mr. Braun said, have really been notified. And I understand the challenges in these Zoom days. And because it is the Zoom days, I think we need to go take the extra effort so people really know what is coming down the pike. Because as we all know, once one of these dense developments come in, here come the rest. The train has started rolling. So I don't believe that this is in line with our master plan, the spirit of the master plan, or what the master plan's really intended when it was written. And so thank you for that. We wanted to recognize, what's the word? I'm blocking on the word, our discontent with the idea of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Ms. Conkey?
Okay. Yep.
You may want to remind the public that there will be public hearings on these items if they prefer to do it then.
Yep.
So we would have to revisit all these individuals once again, and I don't think that's fair, but we can decide at that time. But if the public could limit their comments to items other than the public hearings, because those are separate, and you will have the same amount of time to respond and comment. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to reiterate what the chair just said, we will have plenty of time to get to each person's comment. But if you are holding comments for either the rezoning or the preliminary PUD, I would ask you to maybe lower your hand at this time, and we can save your comments for just a few minutes from now. That does make sure that we keep your comments with the case when we have our record of what the public comment are that we have to keep in forward to the township board. So if there are any other comments at this time other than the rezoning or the preliminary PUD, we can hear those now. Otherwise, I would ask that you lower your hand. Okay, I guess we're going to take a few more. Okay, Adam Olney is next.
Yes, Adam Olney, 9315 Lakewood Court. I understand the hearing in just a moment just doesn't line up with my schedule, so I'm going to speak now. Sorry. Hearing a lot of personal opinions, so I'll share mine, and that's just what they are, personal opinions. I support this development that Mr. Gronow has proposed. I moved to this township with thoughts of how I was going to spend my time here just like everybody else. And part of that thoughts is having a school that has students in it, having a tax base that can afford amenities. So part of that is going to be development. I also support the property rights of Mr. Leland to sell his property and do what he wants with it. This is private property. He's choosing to sell it to a developer. That developer is going through the proper process to get the zoning changed. And if any of you truly look at the master plan before you moved here, you would notice that the master plan has a future land use section, and the future land use section for this property is exactly what is being proposed to rezone to. There is a reason for a future land use. It's the future now, and they want to change it to that. So I understand, you live out in the country, you want to look at sunflowers, well, plant your own sunflowers. If you want that property to remain sunflowers, then buy it yourself. Have a good night.
Thank you, Adam. All right, next up is David Gordon.
Hi, David Gordon, Hellner Road. Government in America is not very well respected, and one of the reasons is that it treats its citizens like mushrooms. We're kept in the dark and fed you-know-what. This township has lots of ways to reach out, and they've availed themselves of only the least effective at this point regarding this rezoning. At the minimum, I would hope that the Planning Commission would send out a mailing to all taxpayers, because this subdivision is going to have to be subsidized by the rest of us who already lived here, because the taxes that it brings in will not pay for the services that it requires. And if there's a question about that, then I would suggest that the Planning Commission does a cost of services study. There's been hundreds of them done all around the country, and typically when a subdivision takes over property that used to be a farm, it's a net loss for the township treasury. But I don't want to talk about the subject of the rezoning right immediately. I'll wait for the rezoning to come up on the agenda. I want to talk about the process. I don't think the Planning Commission should send out letters to every time they have a rezoning in front of them, but this is a huge rezoning. This project is the biggest in a generation, and it will have huge impacts throughout the entire community. I would wager that less than 5% of the people in this community even know this is happening. The township puts out a bi-monthly newsletter to about 350 people that they have their emails for. I've seen nothing about this. There's no news articles on the front page of the township website regarding this. It feels like it's being intentionally kept under the radar, and nobody appreciates that. I mean, could people be more involved? Yes. Could voters be less apathetic? Yes. But it's not enough for the local government to be transparent. You need to reach out to the community on projects that are this huge. And speaking of the master plan and the fact that there's a future land use portion of it, the zoning on this property right now is 1 house for every 2 acres. The future land use is between 1 and 4 houses per acre. It doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be as dense as the most radical reading of the master plan. The reason it was written that way was to give the Planning Commission leeway to look at this plan. So I kind of have a problem when the master plan, without going through the rezoning process, essentially de facto rezones a property by changing its designation, which is basically just opening up a property for rezoning without going through the process of rezoning.
10 seconds, Mr.
That's
Gordon.
about all I had to say. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sorry. Up next is David Perry.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I live at 9411 Earhart Road, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I've lived here 14 years. Moved here because of the rural character. Still love it. In fact, a few years back, the Detroit News had a survey of, I think it was the top 25 areas to live in Southeast Michigan. And Northfield Township came in at number 11, which I found pretty interesting because usually people don't know where it is, I find. And I don't think that was because of all the density of homes, because we really don't have that. And now we're looking at something that would greatly change that situation. I looked at the plan that was sent via email. I find it interesting that that came to me just yesterday. In fact, I read about this in the Ann Arbor News or the MLive site before I ever heard anything from the township. So I just want to reiterate whatever others have said, is this process is not really acceptable. Unfortunately, I really don't like to have to say this, but it's deja vu all over again. After 14 years here, I was here for the last round of this development effort, and we went through the same thing with lack of notice for hearings. And I don't want to be cynical here, but it seems that the township government thinks the wheels of their plans can be greased by not including the public. And that's not the way a democracy should work. So I want to, again, stress that I think that we need to have more public hearings on this and a chance to let people understand that this is occurring and how they can contribute their viewpoints, whatever they may be, because there's different viewpoints here, and it's good to hear all of them, and I appreciate hearing all of them. I do want to take my hat off to the gentleman who owns this land. I believe, if I'm correct, he's been farming it for a long time. I do agree he has the right to sell this land. I don't agree that people can do whatever they want. I can't sell my property here, my 10 acres, and invite in a nuclear dump site. It doesn't work that way, okay? So we do, as a community, have input. We do have the right to sell our land as well. Also, I'd like to point out that that's excellent farmland. And it is truly a national issue that farmland is being paved over daily. Prime farmland is hard to come by. We live amongst it. We take it for granted. Trust me, go to Colorado, go to New Mexico. go to other parts of the world. It's a rare commodity to have land you can cultivate like this without irrigation. I would suggest that maybe we look for a way for this man's land to be sold and preserve this farmland. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chair, at this time we have no more hands raised.
Thank you. Next would be clarifications from commissioners. Anyone have any? Seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Of course, there was an item in correspondence that was in the packet. I know this since the packet was published, there have been many more. Mr. Zarzecki, I would like to get with you to forward any of the emails that were sent to the planning commissioners and excluded to Ms. Bird. If you could forward those to Ms. Bird, she can have them in the next packet. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you for that. I'll make sure those are sent.
Thank you. So that brings us to item 7A. Before I get to the public hearing, I'll briefly go over how the process works. We'll call on the applicant to make a statement regarding their request, preferably 5 minutes or less. We'll call on the planner to present a short summary of the report. We'll call on the public that wish to speak. Again, a 3-minute time limit per speaker. And we may call on the applicant or the planning consultant if there's any questions from the commissioners. So with that, I make a motion to open public hearing for case JPC210001 approve with conditions or deny the request of Chestnut Development on behalf of Dennis Leland, WTR, vacant Whitmore Lake Road, Whitmore Lake, Michigan. The 91.5 acre parcel is located at the northwest corner of Whitmore Lake Road in North Territorial. The applicant is requesting through the planned unit development process to rezone from LR low density residential to MR multifamily residential. The parcel number is B-02-19-100-006 and is currently zoned LR low density residential. Support by Mr. Iaquinto. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. So with that, we will go to the applicant if he's available, Ms. Conkey.
Yes, I believe he is here, and I was told that a few members of his team would be as well. So Mr. Gronow, at this time, if you could raise your hand and have your team members do the same, just so I can see all of you easily and promote you to talk at this time.
And also on the topic, if they could limit it to the topic of the rezoning.
Yes, please limit to the topic of the rezoning. We can keep it brief. We'll have plenty of time for in-depth discussion later.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Well, hello, folks. I can tell you my heart's beating about a mile a minute right now. So if I stumble a bit, please just bear with me. I've been a realtor in Livingston County, just a neighboring county to the north, for about 35 years. I'm 64. I have a wife and 2 boys and a bunch of grandkids. Very blessed life. I always get nervous in planning commission meetings because I'm the most hated guy in the room, and I understand that completely. Where I live, there's a proposed rezoning right now for a hospital about a mile from my house. It's going to change our life as well. We're going to have a lot more traffic than we've ever seen before. One of the things that I've studied most of my real estate career, by the way, folks, I'm just a small builder. You can Google my company and check me out a little bit. There's one of my projects that's already up and running called Chestnut Crossing. And while we're chatting, if anybody would like to Google that and look at it, I invite you to do that. I also have built many small communities throughout Livingston County and have been a resident here for the past 40 years. But the point at hand is the community in 100% of the cases will step forward with negativity towards any proposed development. And I'm used to that. I understand why it is. I'm saddened by it because I'm in the thick of the real estate and the home building business, and I'm seeing a overwhelming demand for housing. Our housing market has been decimated by COVID, by other factors in the economy, and it's made housing unaffordable for my kids, my grandkids, and my future generations. Compounding the issue with affordability is unbelievably skyrocketing supplies and material costs. I don't know if anyone's been to Home Depot or Lowe's recently and looked at how much a 2x4 cost. But it's staggering to see the spike in all things related to construction. So one of my goals has always been to bring something affordable to the market, something that won't break the backs of the newlywed couple that's trying to make it and get a stake in life so that they can have a home equity. They can start building that future for them and their kids. And when you're burdened with a $500,000 mortgage, it's tough. I mean, the burden on financial requirements of that are staggering. It has effect on the family. It has effect on the kids. It has effect on their marriage. So I am not doing this to just do it and make money. I'm doing it because I feel there's an overwhelming need for affordable housing in our state, in our local community, so our kids have somewhere to go where they can build equity. And there is such a need for rental where folks can go and not worry about anything. It's all taken care of for them. The lawns are cut, the snow is shoveled. It's a high quality property that's just similar to their home that they had to move out of, and they're ready to just live without a worry. So in the spirit of trying to bring that product to Northfield Township, I started a year and a half ago talking to folks to make sure we weren't barking up the wrong tree here. This property's been planned for the sort of density that we're proposing for a long time. There is sewer service available to the property. Utilities are there. I'm sure you'll hear the planner's remarks. But I just want you to consider, I know that folks don't like development. They don't like the psychological impulse to say it's bad. It's always bad. But Northfield needs development. Northfield needs development, in my opinion, my humble opinion, respectfully, badly. Your school system is grossly underpopulated. There's a lot of bond debt out there. There's just not enough kids in the school. My little project isn't going to affect that very much, but it will have a positive impact on that as well as the tax base. And I assure you that whatever I do in Northfield, it will be a quality product. I don't cut corners in my construction, and I welcome you to visit one of my projects. And if anybody wants to contact me, I'm wide open. My cell phone number is all over the internet everywhere. So please feel free to talk to me. I'll address your concerns one at a time. Thanks. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Gronow. And we will go to planning consultant, Ms. Konecki.
Thank you, Chair. So the proposed rezoning here is to rezone the 91.5 acre parcel from LR low density residential to MR multifamily residential. We've noted in our report that this is in fact consistent with the future land use designation in the master plan, which is generally one of the major findings of fact that need to be present in order to support a rezoning petition. The mixed use future land use classification does map to the MR district as what we call a most appropriate zone. And that's the relationship between that future land use designation and the suggested rezoning here. Rezoning to the MR, as many have noted, would increase the permitted density on the site and allow for 2-family and multiple family dwellings, which are not currently permitted in the LR, as well as some other institutional uses, including hospitals and nursing homes as conditional uses. I believe that's sufficient for now, but I do want to just kind of couch this as saying, this is something that we talked with Mr. Gronow about because we felt that a transparent process in which the township determined an appropriate zone and an appropriate density rather than just jump to a PUD and use a lot of discretion in upzoning the property was something that we should talk about as a community. So I can get into more of that later when we discuss as the Planning Commission, but those are the facts of the case.
Thank you, Ms. Konecki. At this time, we'll go to members of the public that would like to speak. Again, there'll be a 3-minute time limit per person. I'll be timing that, and if you get close, I'll step in and tell you have, so many seconds left. But with that, we'll go to the
Mr. Chair,
public. Yes, Mr. Iaquinto.
I just want to confirm, if someone spoke again, they're not going to get an opportunity, if it's regarding this topic and they spoke on it again, they're not going to get another 3 minutes, correct, sir?
I have a list of the individuals that did. It's up to the commission at this point.
I feel it's improper as one commissioner to give them another 3 minutes if they spoke and chose when they were clear direction of when to speak for this public hearing. So thank you.
I disagree.
Who's that from?
That's Mr. Gustafson.
Thank
Because
you.
I feel like Commissioner Roman clarified when to speak and for what issue, and Ms. Konecki did as well, halfway through it. So I think if some of the people spoke early and they want to speak again, then they should be able to. I don't want to be in a position or to appear like we're shutting off discussion if people want to talk. So
I'd like to add to that. I agree with Scott in that I think the more we can hear from the public, given how much feedback we just got about the process, it would be really valuable. It would be great if you've already talked about this issue. If you have something separate that you did not earlier address, that would make a lot of sense to me. To repeat your comments, that doesn't make any sense.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Gustafson, I did mention prior to the call to the public regarding there will be time for a public hearing, just for the record.
Okay.
Anyone else? Mr. Zarzecki, Mr. Dwyer, Ms. Chick, your wishes?
I would agree with Mr. Gustafson and Ms. Infante that we should allow them to speak, but they need to clarify that they're not going to just repeat what was said earlier.
Okay, I think that's what we need to. We'll just continue as normal then. So with that, we will go to call to the public, the public hearing, public comments on the public hearing. Ms. Konecki, 3 minutes.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'll just give a brief refresher for those who might have joined late. Please use the raise hand function if you would like to address the Planning Commission. I know people are typing in the Q&A, but if you really want to address the Planning Commission, please use the raise hand function and I will unmute you. And please first state your name and address. I do have a comment in the Q&A, Chair. I don't know if you would like me to read that in the record or ask the person to raise their hand and address the Planning Commission.
I would prefer that they raise hand and announce.
Okay. So J.K. Sutton, we have a comment from you. Can you please raise your hand and give your comment to the Planning Commission, either in this case or the next one? Thank you. We'll move on to Jenny Olney.
Hello, my name is Jenny Olney, 9315 Lakewood Court. I just wanted to first start by thanking Mr. Gronow for coming to tonight's meeting and sharing your proposal with us. And thank you for thinking of Northfield Township. I really appreciate what seems to be just sincere and thoughtful grasp on the reality of the current housing situation and the need that Northfield Township has for this. As a resident who've lived here now for 10 years and growing a family, it's really sad when we see so many families leave our community because they want to grow into new housing or because the schools are becoming so small. And my daughter, we couldn't even field a softball team for her this year because there's just not enough kids. That's something that I very much want to stay a part of this community. And with the lack of housing and affordable housing, it's just the reality that this community is now facing. So it's really sad to hear what feels like an exaggeration from so many members of this doomsday mentality that somehow Northfield Township is going to explode like South Lyon did, or just their selfishness in wanting to keep their view of a field outside their window instead of thinking about the benefits that this would bring to the community. So again, I thank the Planning Commission for taking this into consideration and just want to voice that I am in full support of this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Up next is coming up on my screen as Wines.
Hello, my name is Susan Weinberg. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
good. Okay,
Can you spell your last name, please?
I live at, my name's Susan Weinberg. I live at 712 East Ann Street in Ann Arbor. And I'm just speaking on behalf of many of my friends who live in the township who are stunned at the rapidity of this, change of zoning, which of course, when people buy property, they expect the zoning to stay the way it was when they bought their property, and to change the zoning on people who have lived there 10 or 20 years with such a rapid process seems to be unfair to these homeowners who deserve to have more of an input into the change of the master plan and the change of the zoning. So that's just my opposition to this proposal as it is stated today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, up next is James Demourn.
Thank you, Planning Commission. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is James Demourn. I live at 2771 Maplewood Avenue, Ann Arbor, Michigan 48104. I will state that though I'm not a resident of Northfield Township, I appear before you tonight as an interested party in the development petition of Chestnut Ridge before you this evening. I also appear before you tonight as a former planning commissioner with the city of Ann Arbor, so I think I know a thing or two about comprehensive growth plans and zoning. I drive past this site every morning on the way to Whitmore Lake High School, and I take the opportunity to swim at your beautiful community pool. I am impressed that Northfield has saw fit to preserve its rural character, at least up to now. I realize that some decision makers believe that agricultural land is strictly quote unquote blank, but nothing be further from the truth. Washtenaw County is once again under tremendous growth pressures, particularly in a post-COVID environment. Southeast Michigan residents are once again eager to quote, get away from it all, unquote. I can imagine policymakers licking their chops over the new opportunities property taxes would yield for the township with this development. However, let me direct you to a particular document a neighborhood group opposing this project has provided to the public. I believe it bears review. For some value policymakers, as I mentioned, I imagine you cannot really place value on open space in your township as you have so much of it. Why object, particularly in an area with sewer and water hookup? This is why. Agricultural lands pay for themselves in the long run. They do not demand services. Corn, dairy cows, and particularly sunflowers do not suffer from mental health breakdowns or demand police services. Commercial zoning also pays for itself, although the demand for utilities and some services is particularly stronger. I am referring to a September 2016 report by the American Farmland Trust reflecting this, and I'd like to supply this for the record to the Planning Commission if it's not approved, or the Township Board that it has. However, let me talk about residential. And while it would be gleaming with new taxes, with new construction, residential demands greater services and infrastructure. And that infrastructure will wear out. Eventually, taxes will have to be raised to cover these costs, and all these folk fleeing the problems for the city for lower taxes will once again lament the city around them. There's also intrinsic value in the protection of open space, from serving sunflowers to providing relief for many, as well from a sustainability perspective. With the climate crisis on us, and yes, folks, it's real, open space is that much more valuable to protect agricultural and environmental opportunities in this area. I'll talk to you more about the master plan in the next public hearing. Thank you for considering my remarks.
Thank you, James. Okay, up next is George A. Garcia.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I guess I have a few things I'd say, and I kind of disagree about the medium density, that their plan meets the medium density. In fact, they've asked, well, the previous plan that had the assisted living facility in it definitely exceeded it. But even in this current plan, they have a list of deviations from MR zoning and that they have listed there, which includes that the single family lot size is about 75% the size of what is listed for medium density in your master plan. The lot sizes, the setbacks are much smaller than is listed in it. So, and the density right now is, overall density is about 3.3 units per acre, which is really at the upper end of that 1 to 4 unit density. And I don't know if that density, that 1 to 4 units per acre density, is on average for the whole site, or is it for each one? Because certainly in the apartments, it's going to be much higher, or townhomes, whatever, is going to be much higher density there than certainly 4 units. I'd also like to make the point that in your master plan, you know, the one of the priorities is preserving farmland and open spaces in the master plan. I'd also like to make the point, and this reiterates a point someone made earlier about this development affecting far more people than people that live within 300 feet of this. And that would have to do with the traffic patterns. You're going to have a couple hundred, at least close to 300 units in there. And the number of cars that are going to be coming in and out of that development every day is going to be massive. It's going to be hundreds. And you're right down the street from a high school. Neither Whitmore Lake Road nor North Territorial are going to, are set to handle that sort of traffic. It's already a traffic problem there. I should say I live in Dexter. I'm in Park Ridge Drive in Dexter. And I drive by there often, and, the traffic there can be very difficult at certain times of the day. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, one of the reasons that we're even able to consider this medium density is because there are services, sewer, et cetera, water services there down Whitmore Lake Road. Well, my understanding is those have been installed in the last few years at taxpayer expense. And, I think that's something that maybe people want to be thinking about, is that are taxpayers subsidizing this thing by having paid for the sewer to go in there so that now they can make it medium density. So I think there's a lot of issues with this development, and I do not believe,
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. I do not believe that it really meets the medium density residential. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, can I get your address, please?
Park Ridge Drive, Dexter.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Kristin Delaney.
Hi, Planning Commission. It's Kristin Delaney, 8419 Main Street. Just chiming in to say that I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of living in a ghost town. In 7 years, my family had a business here in the community, and we watched other businesses leave. We lost a grocery store, a bank, a pharmacy, and we watched people leave. Every week, we'd have customers coming and saying they were moving to Brighton, South Lyon, or Dexter, and who can blame them? Who wants to live in a community with zero growth, actually worse than zero growth, a community that is in decline, which I think that we are. This is a community where I need to leave to do pretty much anything short of buying liquor, cigarettes, gas, or pizza. For far too long, a small group of Northfield Township residents have kept a stranglehold on development here, and it has to stop. I would urge Northfield neighbors to think beyond the property lines of their 5-acre parcels and actually start showing some concern about the rest of the community around them. Maybe they haven't driven through town, since I'm guessing they probably go to Ann Arbor for most of their needs, but I would urge them to take a drive down Main Street and see what decades of being actively anti-growth has caused. Their complaints about the density of this proposed development are a straw man argument if ever there was one. They are clearly anti-growth at any density, by any developer, and in any location, and nothing will satisfy them. History has proven that. No matter what this developer does to meet their concerns, and no matter what changes to the design are made, the Build Absolutely Nothing Anywhere crowd will oppose it no matter what. We are very lucky to have a quality developer like Mr. Gronow who wants to invest here, despite our community's well-deserved reputation for being difficult to work with and anti-growth. I have heard talk about petitions and referendums, and I'd urge the anti-growth activists to remember how well that worked out during the recent effort to ban marijuana businesses. The tide is turning, and if the Northfield neighbors want to chase off a quality developer now, it will be their loss, as this area will be developed, and you will find that the harder you make the process, the more the quality of the development will diminish. Anti-growth mentality cannot go on forever. The area around Whitmore Lake Road and North Territorial Road is prime for growth, and it will be developed. It is not the anti-growth activist nature preserve. It's private property that a family has been paying taxes on for decades, and the proposed PUD is appropriate. I would urge the Planning Commission to follow the recommendations of your professional planning consultants and approve the PUD plan and the rezoning to the Township Board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kristen. Okay, up next is Judith Moldenhauer.
Hi, my name is Judith Moldenhauer. I live at 4681 6 Mile Road, South Lyon. I'm in Northfield Township, even with South Lyon mailing address. Anyhow, I have read over the packet that was provided, and I think that there are a number of issues at work here. One, yes, the density is, I think far too much for that, all what other people have said regarding services and such, but it seems that you could still have other options for planned growth. And the density there can cause, I think, a lot of problems. Also, in terms of the roads, that the recommendation was if something goes in there with this density, that there would have to be additional turn lanes added. And so that's additional construction. Again, who's paying for that? Somebody brought up the issue of services, and all of that gets extended. The other thing is that this is so dense and there are berms up all around. It's as if this piece of property was being isolated from the rest of the community. And it seems that growth and development can happen, especially in maybe other pockets, besides just sort of concentrating one, but thinking about how you can have development that doesn't have such an impact, a horrible impact on the environment, and that also enables people to interact with one another right now. The way it's constructed, it really creates an isolated area and not encourage the interaction of the people who live there with the people who live around the area. And just to seek other kinds of growth opportunities for the department, for the township, I think is important. For example, this plot, it might be, yes, indeed, lower density, but maybe, there are other kinds of small farms or organic farming initiatives. So I would encourage the township and even the Planning Commission to seek developers that really do want to address the issue of low-income housing and ways to do that, but not so that it just packs people into a small space and actually kind of isolates them, but finds ways to integrate that population into the rest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Up next is Joe Kurth.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Joe Kurth. I live at 9247 Hillcrest in Whitmore Lake. I've lived here all but 4 years of my 44 years of life. This town needs to grow. We need a development to come in. We've tried this once before and it was rejected. This town is dying because of the lack of growth. We need to grow. Do we need to blow up like South Lyon did? No, I don't think so. I like the small town community. I like the small school, but you have to have students in that school to make it thrive. And currently, we are very low on the numbers in our school system. I mean, somebody stated earlier they couldn't even field a softball team because of lack of students. This impacts more than a small group of people. This impacts our whole community and our growth. If we have places for people to be, we will have growth. We will have people, we'll have kids in our school. And I'm one person that thinks that our youth is the most important thing that we have right now, because they're going to be the controlling interest when we're old and they're taking care of us. So I'm all good for this. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, we're getting into a couple of repeats here. Just to clarify what the commission discussed, please limit your comments if you've already spoken to a separate point or a clarification. So up next is Francine Dolins.
Thank you to the commission for allowing me to speak again. I have a few points that I wanted to raise that are different than the ones from earlier. I just wanted to say that I think growth is fine. There is nothing wrong with growth. I think growth within the character of our environment is really important. And so just to counter something that Kristin only said earlier, that was actually a pointed and personal comment, which I don't think is really appropriate, is that people are not just looking out their windows to like sunflowers or something else. We are actually looking out and we want to see the environment that we are part of. And we want to see an environment that we have tried to make into a healthy and beautiful place that is our township. So I think those are really important, that we can do both. We can have growth and we can also have a really beautiful environment that protects and keeps all of us happy in wanting to live in Northfield Township. That's first of all. Secondly, the two issues that I'd like to raise with the way that the planner has created this development plan is, one is about the density of the property, and the other is, which isn't necessarily the developer, but it's the township saying that we need to raise taxes. So it's been documented that turning farms into subdivisions costs more in services than it gets in taxes. Right? A township, if the township really believes this, then let them do a cost of services study and to prove this and to show each resident here that we will either lose or we will gain by having these developments. So if we're going to gain by it, well, then maybe we should go ahead. But in my understanding from all the documentation, all the research I've done, we will lose in taxes. For instance, Scioto Township has done a study and they have decided that dense housing development is not a financial gain to their township. That's the first thing. Okay, the density of the property that the developer has put in is at the high end of medium density. It is at the extreme end. And then the developer is still asking for exceptions. So medium density definition is 1 to 4 houses per acre, no commercial property, and no assisted living. The high density definition has greater than 4 houses per acre and includes both commercial property and assisted living, which is exactly what the developer is asking for. Okay, so if we look at the high density, not medium density, we're actually building a city in Northfield Township. So, and this is coming from the pages of 54 and 55 of the master plan. So compatible uses of the master plan, elements of medium density does not allow apartments, which is in this developer's plan. It does not allow assisted living, but it does allow condominiums, right? So the elements of high density are both apartments and assisted living, commercial property, etc.
15 seconds, Ms. Dolins.
These are problems. The development strategies do not stick with the master plan. And then there's serious issues in terms of traffic and pollution, as others have already said. It will be a disaster for this area and this rural community. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time, for listening, and for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Francine. Okay, up next is David Gordon.
Hi, I will speak to a different issue. I've been looking at I actually served on the planning commission in this township for 6 years. I look at multi-family residential, which is what this developer is looking to get the property rezoned to. And basically, if you look at the intent of it, multi-family residential is supposed to be, quote, adjacent to such other uses, buildings, structures, or amenities which support, complement, or serve a density and intensity. So basically, multifamily residential should be next to something other than, the only amenity that's around here that could possibly be considered in that definition is the intersection, is the highway and the fact that there's sewers there. I don't believe this plan as designed by the developer qualifies for multifamily residential. It also is more dense than what medium density residential land use is envisioned in the master plan by my reading of it. And I think if this was put out to the entire public, members of our community, and they took this design and overlaid it on on the piece of property, I doubt anybody would consider this medium density. It is the highest density imaginable at 4 quarter acre housing, 4 houses per acre. 2 would be fine. 1 would be fine. Those are all options available to the Planning Commission. I would urge the Planning Commission to either reject this plan or certainly to postpone any decision until after the public is actually aware that this is happening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Right, up next is Karen C. Alexa.
Hi, I'm Karen Alexa at 7210 Whitmore Lake Road, and I am pro-growth. I believe that my home would be located directly across from the entrance on Whitmore Lake Road from this map that I'm looking at, or the proposed site, and it is unbelievable. I'm all for subdivisions with homes, but to put in this many units in such a dense area is absolutely crazy. And as much as I would love to see a thriving Northfield Township downtown center, these people are going to go to Ann Arbor. The expressway's right there. Kroger's is just down the road. Bush's, they're all right there. They're not going to be coming to Whitmore Lake unless Whitmore Lake puts something in to draw people in. And that's, where we fall short too. Mostly I am concerned about the density of this. I would love to see a neighborhood across the street. My other concern is the well table, because we have a deep well. We also have a very expensive engineered drain field that I hope to not have to hook up to septic, and I hope to not have to pay to have one installed for this subdivision. I think that more research needs to be done, and I think that this definitely needs to be downsized. Another problem that I wanted to point out that Northfield Township deals with is we are pressed by Dexter, Hamburg, Brighton, South Lyon, and Ann Arbor. We can only get so big. We only have so much resources. Those other towns are so much bigger than us because they have so much more property. Anyways, and I agree with a lot of the people that voiced their concern regarding the density. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, at this time, if there's anyone else wishing to address the Planning Commission, please use the raise hand function. Okay, we have 2 more. And if you have already spoken, just to reiterate, please limit your comments to new points or clarifications. Jennifer Delisle is up next.
Hi, Jennifer Delisle, 7441 Spencer Road. I was shocked to see the density on this. I don't think the rezoning is appropriate just because it is surrounded by people with AR zoning with no buffer. It's already been upzoned, and to do it in addition to what already's been done just seems excessive. I see that it's a corner for some kind of development, but not another gas station, for goodness sake. And not just every inch of that property seems to be covered with little houses. It's too dense to be across the street from people with AR. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jennifer. All All right, up next is Rachel Elizabeth Pricer.
Hi, again, voicing different things from before. I thought it was interesting that the developer's only proposal was that he was solving the affordable housing crisis. And I did Google his developments like he asked us to. In a Howell address, it is $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. That is the same I pay for my mortgage at a 10-acre huge house. So not affordable at all, actually. And with an Ann Arbor address, who knows what that price would go up to then. So if we're not against development, I think houses should go in there. That would be lovely. We're just asking for the Chestnut Creek, Chestnut Springs development instead of the Chestnut Crossing development, which doesn't actually solve the issues the developer discussed. So a plan that is proposed that isn't tugging at emotional heartstrings but not fulfilling them would be nice. Thank you. Oh, my address is 4294 Linden Lane.
Thank you, Rachel. All right. Up next is Jean. Jean, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Jean Hornback. I live at 4360 North Territorial Road East. I have several points. One is this is a proposed major change to our community, and all of our citizens deserve to be well informed. I think what has been done thus far meets the minimums, but our local government needs to take positive action to be much more transparent. And so I would encourage the Planning Commission as well as the Township Board to truly take that to heart and make this much more public. Also, Dennis Leland, as property owner, does have a right to sell his property, but not just for anything. That's why we have zoning ordinances. This does not meet the current rural atmosphere and the current residents of the area. It is not selfish. It is self-preservation of our way of living. It does not meet the master plan's intent. It is not low density. People who currently live in a subdivision environment may not understand rural living, but this is a rural atmosphere. It is not a subdivision. This would be an opening of a gate for further subdivisions like this. This is not against any development, but it should not be in this inappropriate area or in this inappropriate manner. Regarding bringing in more students for our schools, I know that that's a big issue, especially for people who live in the hamlet. But you need to understand that any students that move into that area may very well go to Dexter or Ann Arbor via the open schools. And many of the people who would move into such an area would end up going into Ann Arbor, as Karen Alexa mentioned earlier, not necessarily downtown Whitmore Lake. Just bringing in more housing will not solve Whitmore Lake's challenges. Whitmore Lake needs to have more destinations for people to come to. Whitmore Lake needs more employment opportunities in our area as well as the surrounding areas to bring people to the area. And Whitmore Lake needs better education, and I'm not just talking sports. If our schools become noted as being excellent education, then people will want to move here, whether it's downtown in the hamlet.
10 seconds, Ms. Hornbeck.
I am disappointed that our Planning Commission and our Township Board has not publicized this proposed development. I understand that, Steve Gronow, you must be
Ms. Hornbeck, I'm sorry.
Inappropriate. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair, at this time, I see no more hands raised for public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Conkey. With that, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquinto. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. The next public hearing is item 7B. I make a motion to open a public hearing for case JPC 210001. Approve with conditions or deny the preliminary request of Chestnut Development on behalf of Dennis Leland, vacant Whitmore Lake Road, Whitmore Lake, Michigan. The 91.5 acre parcel is located on the northwest corner of Whitmore Lake Road and North Territorial Road. The applicant is proposing under the provisions of Article 23, a planned unit development with a mix of attached and detached residential units with 2 outlots identified for future residential and or commercial development. The parcel number is B-02-19-100-006 and currently zoned LR low density residential.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Chick. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Once again, we can go to the applicant, Mr. Gronow, for a 5-minute or less statement.
Oh my gosh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I wasn't prepared to speak again, but I'd love to respond a little bit. Folks, I've heard every word everybody has said, and I can't disagree with your sentiments or your feelings about any proposed development. One of the things that we deal with in my world, the development world, is there's a lot of misconception and there's a lot of misnomers about development. Development on its face, when you talk to most people, hey, would you like to see a community go in next door to your house or across the street or down the road? They throw their hands up and, oh, no, we don't want that. We're here. Nobody else can be here. We moved here for the rural character. The traffic, our kids are going to get run over in the street. I mean, I've heard it all. I've got so many arrows in my back from so many meetings, and it just doesn't prove to be true in the long run. And I'm not trying to offend anybody that has spoke tonight. I respect everyone's sentiments greatly. But I can tell you that a lot of the fears are unfounded, and you will see the benefits and the blessings that come to a community that embraces a quality development, not some national maybe home builder or developer that comes and you're just a statistic and you're just another community and it's just another number on a balance sheet. This project is truly the pride of our company and will be the pride of our company. It's our signature project. We hope that when it's completed, you will see that it isn't the horror that everyone is making it out to be. The traffic issues have been studied very carefully. We are prepared to fund improvements to the public road system around the development that'll alleviate the present issues with traffic. It actually will improve the quality of the traffic in the area. We've spent a considerable amount of money researching the aquifer. I know there was a concern mentioned about wells and so forth. And I can assure you the state of Michigan has a very tight grip on the throat of any developer that wants to install any kind of a public water supply. And we have spent a considerable amount of money and resources with professional groups testing the water supply. And even after, if we are successful tonight, we will drill another well to yet test again and make sure that there's no negative impact on anybody's well or anybody's water quality. I'll walk away from the project if there's any danger of that. And as I mentioned early on to members of the township, I didn't come here to fight. I don't want to fight. I don't want a lawsuit. I don't want any of that, and I won't do that. If this community does not want development here, then I'll just quietly go about my business and go somewhere else. You have nothing to fear from me from the courts. I won't do that. I want you to know that the spirit of this project, the density is the other issue that's been brought up over and over. And I can tell you folks that it all comes down to a function of what the market is asking us to do. There is an overwhelming majority of folks that want to own a home. There's 60 homes proposed here that are affordable homes. These are homes we hope to bring to the market in the low threes. Try to go out there today and find a home, new construction, or even a used home in the low threes for your kids or grandkids. It's impossible unless it's a shack that needs a full rehab. So I believe we're building for the future. I believe these kids need a home. I want to provide it for them in a quality way. I want you to look at the superior foundation system that we use in all our homes, the quality of construction that we use in all of our homes, the level of materials, the craftsmanship that goes in. A couple of my projects were mentioned by someone earlier, and I would invite you to drive through those projects. The same spirit of quality in those projects will go here. And as far as the multifamily goes, the multifamily market is begging for somewhere to put parents, retirees, veterans, where they can afford to live. Someone mentioned in the chat that they thought the price was high. Well, go shopping, try to find something, anything under those kinds of numbers. It's very challenging. And it's not about Steve getting fat and happy on the profits from this project. It's about bringing a quality development to your community. I hope you'll bear with me through the process. I hope you'll give me a chance to show you what we can do. I want you to participate, come and see me at my office, go to my projects, talk to the people that manage them. It's a good thing for the schools. It's a good thing for the community. It couldn't be better positioned. You wouldn't want anything with high density to be interior from the township, inside, away from the interchange, because all that traffic would be traversing across the roadway system that exists, and that would put a burden on the roadway. This is ideally situated. If anywhere in Northfield there should be some development, it's here. And if it's going to happen, I would love it to be with all of your support, with unanimous support. I kind of beseech you to just look inside. Remember, people do need a place to live. We're providing it for people that are retiring, seniors, and affordable for kids that are trying to get their first and second homes. The assisted living part, I can't even tell you the overwhelming demand for that. We've got parents and grandparents that need us to care for them. And the senior living component is essential, needed, and desperately required for any community to be healthy and have people for their folks to go.
15 seconds, Mr. Gronow.
Thank you, Chairman. And I don't want to monopolize the meeting. I just want to urge you to sort of search your souls and just kind of get down to a baseline where you can let somebody else be here as well as yourselves. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to Ms. Conkey for a brief comment.
Thank you, Chair. So as was mentioned in the case description, this is a PUD request for the portion of, I just want to clarify, the PUD really is only applicable to the 77.8 acres of the site that will be for residential. We've been working through some issues with the developer on those outlots that I can get into later, but for reasons of being in line with the ordinance, those really need to be future phases that are not part of this PUD request, although we would like to see some harmony, cross-access easements, stormwater management, et cetera, as a condition of approval here. So as proposed, the 77.8 acre portion of the site is proposed for residential development, totaling 269 residential units consisting of 61 detached homes and 208 attached, what they're calling luxury townhomes, with those two outlots reserved for the future. The PUD process here is intended to permit flexibility in the regulations, the design standards, the open space standards, the circulation standards in the PUD section in general govern, and that added flexibility that the developer is given above and beyond the underlying zoning are to ensure a high quality of development and to allow the township to work cooperatively with the developer to ensure that it is in line with the township's goals. There's a 100-foot buffer proposed around the entire perimeter of the property. 25% of the land within that 77 acres set aside as open space, and kind of a robust pathway and vehicular circulation system provided throughout the development with connections to those future outlots anticipated.
Thank you, Ms. Conkey. With that, we'll go to the members of the public who wish to speak. Again, a 3-minute limit, and please give us your name and your address.
Okay, and I would just like to add, I know that the Q&A chat box is there, and it's very tempting to be typing in there, but it's disruptive to the meeting, and anything that's in there, isn't making its way to the Planning Commission. So if you would like to address the Planning Commission, please do so by raising your hand, and if not, please keep the cross chat to a minimum in the chat down there. So up first is James Demourn.
All right, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm James Demourn. I'm still at 2771 Maplewood Avenue in Ann Arbor. Used homes, I've heard this term bandied about a moment ago. Like cars. Wow. Now that's a new one. That's an interesting selling point. I never thought homes would be like used cars. I just want to speak to the issue of the site plan, really, and the PUD. I just want to make a note that, when you revised the master plan in 2019, it's kind of a promise, if it's an understated one, that you will retain future development at most and low density residential on the site. This PUD is in really kind of contradiction of the recent master plan put in place 2 years ago. I would say if development is to occur, it should follow in the lower residential footprint. I recommend further clustering to allow development to occur in line with low residential density, but place a greater role in protecting open space and natural features and provide a buffer to adjoining rural parcels. And this is considerably more than what's proposed in terms of the development. A more responsible development needs to happen here, not just for the benefit of Northfield residents, but for the greater community at large. And I want to thank Mr. Gronow for his, I believe, sincere comments. But with all due respect, I don't think this is the most responsible development that they go in here in terms of its impact on the overall character of the community. And furthermore, I think there's a great myth that if we raise the supply of housing, it's going to make housing prices down. That's trickle-down housing theory. And just like a certain economic theory, it's utterly a myth. There are other factors that go into housing prices, not the least of which being the national market. I don't know what's going on. There's some comments regarding Whitmore Lake in the downtown. Maybe you look at how development's happening in that area, and maybe there's some questions to do from a DDA perspective, but that's up to this body. Just kind of in closing, I'm going to say again, you guys have something special here because you are rural. You look at Greenock Township and it's burgeoning. You're looking at Hamburg, it's burgeoning. Dexter is burgeoning. There is a lot of development going on elsewhere. We need space to breathe. And I realize that some people say growth, growth, growth. I think the people who say that don't understand what you really have here. And with that, I'm going to conclude my remarks, and you all have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, up next is David Gordon.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak again. The PUD, hopefully, in addition to flexibility in design, would allow for this developer to provide a less dense development, which is what I hear many, many people saying, because that is the nature of the entire area outside of Whitmore Lake and Horseshoe Lake is large lot residential, farming, and 5-acre ag. That's why this thing looks so glaringly out of place. So if you want to do a PUD, it's not necessarily just to ensure a high quality development, but one that actually meets the requirements and the desires of the people who live here. I did want to make a brief comment about Mr. Gronow's concept that this development is what the market wants us to do. Well, that's beside the point. It's what the people in the community want to see happen, not what the market dictates to us they're going to build here because it's easier to sell. If it's not what the residents want, that's the case. And I'd really like to see a study of our housing inventory in our community and some sort of proof that we actually need this sort of development and that it's going to benefit us. Again, a cost of services study would be very helpful to determine whether or not this is a net gain or a net loss for the community. When I look at the development, it just looks like a very dense, jammed together thing, similar to what you see on Nixon Road right now. It looks like every other development I see going up all around Ann Arbor. What we have is special in our community. Have you ever even thought about the fact that the Greenbelt exists because Ann Arbor never bothered to save as much open space as they would have needed? And that's what we have. We shouldn't be paving it over and filling it up. What we have is special, and it'll go away if we start doing this. We need to value what we have as opposed to imagined benefits. If there are benefits, I'd like the developer to actually provide us some paperwork showing what those are, because I don't see them. We're talking about 9 trips per day times 269 is almost 2,500 car trips a day. That's not an advantage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next is George A. Garcia.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be quick on this. I agree with what Mr. Gordon just said, and all the things he said. And I would say from the numbers that you gave, the density here is 3.46 units per acre, which is really maxing out, pretty close to maxing out the 1 to 4 units. The other question I'd like to bring up, and this is really a question, I guess, is what's going to happen with these outlots? There's A and B outlots. I mean, it sounds like they're just sitting there. This is now fallow, but what's going to happen? What are the plans for those in the future? And if the zoning is going to change, what's going to prevent someone, maybe not this developer, maybe somebody else, from coming in and putting in some high rise or something else? Is there going to be a process that will be inclusive of the community to look at what's going to happen with those? Because right now it's like, well, okay, we'll take out these commercial and the assisted living, we'll just call them outlots, but what's going to happen with those? What's the plan? That seems a little sketchy to me. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Up next is Judith Moldenhauer.
Hi, thanks. I support what the last 3 people have said. I think that their points are well taken. And again, in looking at the documents that were provided in the packet, I also noted that there was still a lot that wasn't settled, the outlots being one, but also even the maintenance of the water system. It sounded like that hasn't been decided. And in terms of maintenance, because all of that stuff really would need to be clarified before anything is maintained, and especially with the density of that's being proposed. I mean, if you can't maintain the water treatment and all of that, that's really problematic too. But I do think that, again, the issue of trying to have a space that's not so densely populated, and many people have brought that up, I think that's a big issue. And again, I would encourage the Planning Commission, if indeed growth can be good, to look at an overall plan of throughout the township. So as opposed to just one thing that pops up here, it's always sort of one thing pops up here, as opposed to, if you're really going to plan growth, think about all over. And again, growth that deals with and is more assimilated with the environment and the density of what's already there. In this case, the agricultural lands that are there. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Up next is Adam Olney.
Yes, Adam Olney, 9315 Lakewood Court. I just want to remind people of what some of the conditional uses are in the ag. We were talking about, keeping our ag. That's not what ag actually is. Conditional use in the ag: golf course, including golf driving range, country club, public swimming pool, rec club, church, synagogue, cathedral, a school. So a school right there, like we have just down the road. A medical facility, funeral establishment, hospitals, essential services, childcare facilities. So when you mention ag and you're thinking of just open space and fields or farms, I think even one is listed as an airport or a pretty much a landfill site. So I get it. You bought a property next to an open field. You looked at the master plan. Well, when you looked at the master plan, did you realize that you could have an airport next to you? That's conditional use. Did you realize you could have a landfill next to you? That's conditional use. So maybe you should be happy that someone's trying to put a respectable housing project next to it.
Thank you, Adam. All right, up next is Karen C. Alexa.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, Karen, we can.
Yeah. I just want to, I think of the low income housing, and it seems like if you drive through the mobile home park in Whitmore Lake, there are that was considered low income housing, and there's empty lots there. So are we really looking for low income housing? And I hope that everybody understands that everybody across the street from this unit that they want to, or this development, we are 5-acre parcels. We're required to have 5 acres to build. It's such a jump. It's such a ridiculous jump that it just doesn't make any sense. If you want to put 3 houses on an acre, fine. But these apartments and these units and all that, that's ridiculous. But you know what? If you constantly bow to the developers, negotiate. And if he's not willing to negotiate, he'll find another sucker that will let him build. Are we going to be the suckers? I understand that we need development so that the tax base is spread, but I think that this is just too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to address the Planning Commission at this time? Chair, I see no more hands raised.
Thank you. I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Support by Mr. Iaquinto. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll go to item 8, reports of committees. Board of Trustees report. Ms. Chick.
The board met March 23rd. The board met with representatives from HVA to discuss a resolution to the long response time the township has been experiencing for ambulance service from HVA. HVA said they would work on a written plan summary over the next 6 months to hopefully reduce response time to at least 10 minutes and report monthly on that progress. The board also discussed budget amendments. This item will come back. The board approved a 3% raise for non-union staff. There was a discussion on hiring some combination of a building official, zoning administrator, and an in-house planner. No decision was made. It will be an upcoming agenda. There was further discussion on the DNR grant for North Village Park area. The submission needed to be made by April 1st. Motion was made and approved to cover legal expenses for a TIF review for the DDA. The TIF review will provide an accurate counting properties in the TIF area. There was also a workshop held with the labor attorney for the process of hiring a township manager. A committee will meet to just develop duties, and a decision will need to be made to hire an in-house or acquire a firm to do the search for a manager. There was also a special meeting on March 30th to approve submittal for the DNR grant for the North Village Park area and discuss funding in the area of the first phase of park development. And that's all I have.
Thank you. ZBA report, Mr. Dwyer.
ZBA has not met since our last meeting.
Thank you. Anything from staff, Ms. Bird? On the planning consultant report, Ms. Conkey.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few things. We've been working with a committee of trustees on submitting the North Village Trust Fund grant. And we have authorization from the board to conduct a joint training session with the Planning Commission, ZBA, and interested members of the Board of Trustees, which we've been in touch with the chair of both of those bodies to schedule. We were hoping to get that in an upcoming open planning commission meeting. I thought it was wise to wait until after today to see if we would have any agenda items for the next meeting, but that could be coming up.
Thank you. I also would like to make it, hopefully, when it is a in-person meeting, hopefully those will be happening soon. Parks and Recreation report, Mr. Iaquinto.
Thank you, sir. So Parks and Rec is making tremendous improvements to the community garden. We were there this last weekend on Saturday, installed 8 2-foot-high beds, which are ideal for seniors and or handicapped individuals. And the shed is there to keep additional working utensils in. This next week, we will be there installing a fence up front that is there for aesthetics, not for security. And the public is welcome to attend our working session and help that. We will have our monthly meeting on the 15th of this month. They're always the third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock via Zoom. And they are open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Downtown Planning Group, Ms. Infante.
Yes, I had a work conflict with the last DDA, so I will fill you all in completely at the next PC.
Thank you. There's no unfinished business tonight, which takes us to item 10A, new business, the case JPC210001 which is the request to rezone from LR, low density residential, to MR, multifamily residential on the parcel Whitmore Lake Road and North Territorial. With that, we'll go to the review by Ms. Conkey.
Thank you, Chair. And I will try to keep these short because I know it's been a long evening. So the existing land use on the existing zoning on the site, as we've discussed, is low density residential. The future land use designation is mixed use. Within that future land use designation, one of the appropriate rezoning classifications does include the MR, multifamily residential district, and all other parcels that surround this parcel, even though they may be zoned currently for primarily for AR. There's some GC around this area, but those are all envisioned in this mixed use, medium density residential future land use classification. It's one of 2 areas in the township really that were identified through the master plan as being really viable for growth because of proximity to the interchanges, more high capacity roads, possibility of sewer, among other in this case, close to some commercial uses that are to the south of this site. So The permitted uses that change when we rezoned the MR district are really the addition of 2-family and multiple family as permitted uses, and the addition of institutional uses, including medical and dental clinics, hospitals, nursing homes, and the like. As I mentioned, the future land use designation for this property is mixed use. Just to read briefly from the master plan, the intent of the future land use designation in general is to provide areas where local commercial, service, office, and residential activities can all take place. This designation is intended to allow a flexible approach to development at specific nodes along the US 23 corridor within the central US 23 interchanges in the Lakes sub-area. This is in the mixed use south designation, which the master plan notes in particular has large tracts of vacant land that are intact, presenting opportunities for residential, commercial, and industrial development where sanitary sewer is available. This parcel is within that proposed expansion area for the sewer district, and the applicant, I'm sure, can speak more to the viability of all types of utilities on this site. So there are 5 findings of fact here. We find that the proposed rezoning is supported in each, and I'll just briefly summarize. So the requested zoning change is justified by a change in conditions since the original ordinance was adopted. That primary change is the adoption of the master plan. Further, as I've mentioned, but we'll take a little time to explain here, the planned unit development density requirements for a residential PUD limits the density to either the underlying zoning classification, which is LR, which would allow about 45 units on the entire parcel, or the master plan designation. The master plan designation here doesn't specify a range. It just notes that it's to be the highest density permitted within the township. So over and above what's permitted in those adjacent moderate, medium density residential areas, which the master plan says should permit a range of 1 to 4, although the multifamily residential zoning classification that maps to would allow for density higher than that. So in terms of precedence, the rezoning is consistent with the master plan, which has consistently been used in the past to support a rezoning. In terms of capacity of services, facilities, and other programs that might be required with this rezoning, we recognize that this land is undeveloped, and any change is going to increase demand on public services and facilities. However, that's something the master plan tried to think about and think through logically. Also, with the applicant's intent to go through a PUD process, there's agreements that can be put in place for cost sharing. I'm sure the applicant is well aware of the hookup costs, the connection costs, any improvements to the roadway that Washtenaw County might require to be a good faith partner in helping share some of these costs. Effect of the petition on the condition or value of the property, we've heard a lot from the members of the public on this matter, but once again, we acknowledge that this is an undeveloped site and there will certainly be impacts, but there's nothing that we found in trends in this area and nationally that suggests that dense housing, multifamily housing, even those coming in at a lower price point, decrease property values in any way. And finally, the last point is to consistency with the land use development plan, which I've already spoken to. So based on the above findings of fact, we believe that the proposed rezoning from LR to MR is appropriate. And I'm happy to answer any questions the Planning Commission has at this time, because I know that the relationship of this rezoning to the proposed PUD is a bit confusing. And there are certainly a couple of different ways that this applicant could proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Konecki. Any commissioners have any questions, comments for Ms. Konecki? Mr. Dwyer.
Couple of questions, and then I'll wait for everyone else to ask their questions before I'd like to come back and have some comments, if I may. But just to establish some facts, why were the assisted living and gas station options dropped, and what is the issues with the outlots?
So the PUD provision of the ordinance to approve and specifically the criteria that the Planning Commission must consider and find to be a fact in order to approve the preliminary PUD include a provision that says that the PUD must be controlled by one unified ownership and developed under that single ownership. That is not the applicant's intent here. So it is our opinion that the ordinance does not allow for a phased approach where the applicant could apply for an area plan at the preliminary stage, because once again, that's tied to the preliminary approval, and then sell those outlots to be developed in concert with that preliminary plan through a final plan approval. And that is why. Also, I believe the applicant's plan for that commercial outlot on the corner may have shifted since his initial proposal.
Okay. All right. And there's been a lot of comments about whether or not this development does meet with the master plan. And there were two items that would suggest that it doesn't. There is a specific note in the mixed use south that says standalone high density residential is not compatible with the MUS designation. It specifically excludes this development from that area. And then also on page 30 of the master plan, and several residents made note of this, higher density residential development should be limited to areas serviced by municipal utilities within or adjacent to the village area. So people made comment about growth in order to help downtown. The master plan envisages just such a development as this on the outskirts of Whitmore Lake downtown so that people can bike, walk, get ice cream, coffee, support our businesses, rather than being several miles away where they will never go anywhere except in a car. And if they get in a car, they're probably not going to our downtown. So that the master plan, in my mind, specifically envisioned this type of development at 8 Mile and 23. There's a great piece of property. If this was up there, I'd be the first one to back it. That's what this development seems to be meant for, as opposed to down in the current proposed district where it's specifically excluded. So there seems to be a lot of reliance on whether or not it meets the master plan, and it seems to me there are two instances where it specifically does not.
I think if I can just respond quickly to those points, Chair. So to the first point, I think that language, I left it in there because, we really want to see, even though it can't go under one PUD process, the two outlots come along cohesively with this residential development. The master plan, though, I think is clear that in the mixed use South District, a mix of higher density residential, commercial, industrial, et cetera, is appropriate here, with planned development being within or adjacent to sewer. So it doesn't, that specific future land use designation doesn't speak to proximity to your downtown. I think saying standalone residential is not compatible, but then saying MR zoning is appropriate and it should be developed through PUD is a little bit of mental gymnastics. So I think that's up to the Planning Commission to determine whether or not, the master plan saying MR is appropriate is acceptable, or if that sentence would preclude what we would hope is a phased PUD approach to create a cohesive mixed-use development over time on this spot.
Anyone else?
I have some questions.
Sure, go ahead.
The documents as submitted alternately refer to the landowner as Dennis Leland or the Dennis Leland Trust. And I haven't seen anything that actually clarifies that Dennis Leland is the legal manager of the Dennis Leland Trust. You know, for example, Henry Ford is not the Ford Motor Company. So I feel like that's an inconsistency that should be clarified in these documents. And then a bigger one that concerns me is the occupational code of the state of Michigan, section 339.2008, requires that documents submitted to a government agency for approval be sealed and signed by registered design professionals. In this document, there's one seal and signature of a traffic engineer, but there's no seal of the engineer or the architect or the landscape architect for this actual PUD. And so I think it's invalid and contradictory to state law. Mr. Gronow mentioned that they had done an extensive well study. If that is truly the case, I'd like to see that, because I think the concerns of the neighbors in the area, you know, what's going to be the future of their water resources, I think that's important. Ms. Konecki clarified that the two outlots need to be carved out of this development because of the PUD process. I think the document should be amended to remove that altogether. That, you know, the planning report shows an apartment development there at almost 17 units per acre. And I think Ms. Konecki's report also talks about specific health, safety, and welfare issues that were some concern to the planners, but they didn't bother to mention it. And I think it's important to know what those might be.
I'll give Ms. Konecki an opportunity to respond.
I'm just checking the plans for a digital signature. All right, that's not a resolution. Can you, Mr. Gustafson, can you point me to the place in my letter that you're citing about the public health and safety concerns? Because that's not ringing a bell with me.
You know, I would just, while I'm looking for it, I'd also like to say, you know, I was given a 377-page document to review less than a week ago. And being a planning commissioner is not my full-time job. So this is a lot of information to review in a short period of time. And I think that's a little bit, it's a big ask.
Can I just say that I saw the health and safety thing as well, and I believe it was one of those items that was supposed to be clarified when it gets to, or if it gets to the final review. It wasn't part of this review.
That would make sense to me for that to be my recommendation.
Yeah. Because this is just a preliminary for the PUD. It's not the final review. It's going to come back again. So and just to be clear, we're looking at the March 29th, 2021 McKenna review regarding rezoning.
Yes, at this time, yeah.
Yes, not the PUD plan just yet.
Right.
Yep.
If that helps the commissioners at all.
So it's Julie, in this PDF, it's on page 3 of your report, or page 367 of the 377 report. The proposed development shall be consistent with public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, I remember it now. Yeah. Thank you. So our comment there is that we would just like to see all of the various items that we flagged to be addressed between preliminary and final to be addressed in order to make that finding that it's consistent with public health, safety, and welfare.
Yes, and in the future, I would like to know what those concerns are when I'm being asked to vote on things. I guess I would lastly say that the PUD process is intended to encourage innovation and development and variety. And I don't see this current plan as being either indicative of innovation and or variety. There's 260 townhomes with 1 floor plan and 61 houses with 2 floor plans. It's really monotonous. I do feel like this is developed as a standalone citadel. The wide buffer around it is like a moat that makes it disconnected from the community. And I think along the Whitmore Lakeside, the layout of the houses with the consistent backplane is very, it's just going to be very flat and monotonous. And I think it's inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. And
we're not discussing the PUD right now. Again, that's been mentioned twice. We're discussing the rezoning.
Oh, I apologize.
Thank you. Mrs. Infante had her hand up. Ms. Infante.
I hope that I'm not confusing the two, because I did find it difficult to understand how to address which concerns. I guess my main concern has to do with the sewers. It was my understanding that the sewers were intended for primarily R&D commercial development in that area with mixed residential. And that completely makes sense to me. And I hope I'm not getting off track, because I think the idea of residential development and incorporating businesses into that area using that sewer is exactly what we had envisioned. And this seems to me to be radically out of balance with that, just in terms of proportion of housing to commercial usage of a public utility. So I do worry about that. I mean, how much are we spending on residential development? Not to mention at the north end of the plan is what is written, the future connection to adjacent property. So I guess I am very concerned about sewers, and my desire to see the development of R&D and commercial in that area being principal is what I thought the plan, the master plan had really envisioned. But I think I'm probably getting confused between the two. But sewers, above all, are my major concern. Thanks.
Ms. Konecki, do you have a response for Ms. Infante? I see this.
That might be a question best answered by Mr. McNamara or perhaps Mr. Gronow about specifically the sewer capacity here and the anticipated impacts of the proposed development on that.
Okay. Did you want to comment regarding the R&D designation on that property? I don't see that.
No, the mixed use. So the mixed use future land use designation encompasses a kind of residential, commercial, industrial as potential suitable uses here. We would prefer to see them integrated as well. Don't get me wrong. I think the PUD provision for unified control has put us in a little bit of a difficult position, and we would absolutely prefer that the developer have come to us with a cohesive mixed use plan. But we're trying to find a way forward and do something a little bit more integrated. So if we have specific design comments about integrating with those outlots, we can get into that with the PUD, because I think that, we can continue to discuss that.
Thank you. Hopefully that helps Ms. Infante.
Very much so. Thank you.
Mr. McNamara, do you wish to respond to Ms. Infante's question?
Yeah, good evening. Sure. Just quickly, the quick answer is that this property was envisioned and was included in the sewer use district. When you're master planning a large area for sewer use, you make a lot of assumptions about potential future property uses and the demand that'll have on the system. The condition we have right now, the Northfield Territorial Pumping Station is well under capacity. It's functioning at 10% of its design capacity. And the sewer plant has more than sufficient capacity to support this development. So from the sewer use and the sewer system capacity question, there's more than sufficient capacity to support this development and then subsequent developments within the predetermined sewer area. And as I think was previously mentioned, there's connection fees and other things that support them buying into the system. So I think those issues, and I know that the developer has talked at length with the supervisor and the township attorney about this, about how that would all be worked out financially. But those really, from an engineering standpoint, the sewer capacity is not an issue for this project.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. I saw Ms. Chick's hand up.
I was actually going to answer for Mr. McNamara because I saw that as well, that there was capacity at the sewer, at the wastewater treatment plant, and the sewer lines can handle it. And so I don't want to repeat what he said, but I saw the same thing in the report. And I don't know if I misunderstood what one of the public was commenting on about the future land use map or the future land use designation for this area. That has been part of it. Wasn't just in 2019 that was added. That's been part of our master plan for the past 11 years. So there was plenty of time for people to speak to that issue prior to this, and I'm not sure why they didn't, or at the time they didn't care, thinking the future was somewhere down the road. Well, that was 11 years ago, but I just wanted people to understand that it's been there for a very long time. That's all.
I agree with that comment, Ms. Chick. Mr. Iaquinto.
Thank you. I do agree with Ms. Chick's comment as well, and as well of the fact findings by our planner that based on the above findings effect that we believe that the proposed rezoning of this parcel from LR to MR is appropriate. So I am definitely in support of that. One of the statements that one of our commissioners made is that the 8 Mile property at 8 Mile and 23 would be ideal. That property is zoned industrial. And so it's not set for residential use, just to share that with the rest of the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iaquinto.
And it's a 24-acre parcel. It's a very small parcel.
Thank you. Mr. Dwyer.
Yeah, if I can just reply to that, the point I was trying to make is that a vacant parcel, that may not be the ideal one for a multitude of reasons, but the idea of these high-density residential communities is to be attached to the very edge of town where they can commute to town, they can work to town, they can participate in town. That's the whole point of them. Put them in a field away from town is great for the developer, but it doesn't do anything for the township. So I am not in favor of this because I do not believe it adheres to our master plan, which is precisely not to have these developments in the middle of nowhere and to have them bolted onto town where they can do some good for the town.
Ms. Infante, do you have a response regarding the same topic?
Exactly. Just very quickly, that parcel that we were just talking about actually was going to be built upon. It was going to have commercial on the bottom and then multiple levels of apartments built above it. So it may be zoned industrial, but the plans for it originally prior to probably the Great Recession were to have that be apartment buildings over stores, commercial businesses. So I don't know, zoning seems to be getting a bit flexible here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make my comments, I suppose. I am in agreement with the findings from McKenna. There's two things. We have a future land use map that everyone would like to have liberties with, but in all reality, the property is zoned for something already, and we do have our zoning ordinance language that basically we do have to follow. Am I correct, Ms. Konecki?
Correct. And I think this is a good point in the evening to just reiterate that my suggestion is that the Planning Commission and then the Township Board rezone the property first to set kind of a reasonable range of densities that could be permitted on the site under the PUD. But the PUD is permitted on the site currently, and it can be developed at the density permitted in the master plan, which is just, as high as you feel like going. So saying that the rezoning is not appropriate doesn't necessarily mean that the PUD can't move forward. But I anticipated that there would be some disagreement here and within the community as well about what is the appropriate density on this site. It's been litigated before. And I thought that setting, a reasonable bounds first, and then saying the PUD would be developed on top of it in accordance with that would be a reasonable way to proceed. But just to be clear, the Planning Commission could deny the rezoning and then still move forward with the PUD consideration and saying their density meets the master plan, the plan meets the PUD. So if you do not feel that the MR rezoning is appropriate, that's one matter. If you don't feel that the PUD is appropriate, that's another. I think that they should be tied together. So that's a lot to digest. It's a lot to go through, and I'm happy to answer any other questions about that.
Right. Before I get to Mr. Iaquinto or Mr. Zarzecki, so the advantage at this point, if the Planning Commission decided to recommend approval of the rezoning, is that it gives a definite cap to what the possible development could be, whereas otherwise it could be much higher. Am I correct in that, Ms. Konecki?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the other thing is that regarding the zoning, there's a key word, and it's in section 36-670 of the ordinance. It's regarding the project densities. The total number of dwelling units in a PUD project, which they have the right to have a PUD project there. So there's no doubt about that. But the number of dwelling units in that PUD project shall not exceed the number of dwelling units permitted in the underlying zoning district, or, and it's a big capital letters underlined, or, big bold or, master plan future land use designation. So that is exactly why what is proposed does follow the master plan future land use designation. And I want to make that point perfectly clear. And there's been a lot of comments from the public, from other commissioners even, that this person does have a right to have a PUD there. And the benefit for the Planning Commission to change the zoning is that we can put a cap on there. Now, also, Ms. Konecki, and I don't think anybody's brought this up yet tonight, in that same section of our zoning ordinance, there's a density bonus that could be calculated to the total proposed units. And as far as what I'm seeing that's proposed, that density bonus was not granted. Am I correct?
I believe the density bonus, they were not eligible for that. I think it's limited to only certain types of projects. And I'm sorry, I'm blanking on why they did not qualify for that density bonus, but we had an early conversation that was not going to be something the property owner wanted to pursue.
As far as I'm reading, Ms. Konecki, with my knowledge of that section, is that the density, the bonus would be available if they were to include 2 of the elements of the 5 elements that are listed in that paragraph. Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, if any one of those 5 elements were not desired by this applicant, that's one thing. That's what would exclude from there. But they could easily have matched 2 of those elements and still achieved a density bonus. That's what I'm seeing, and that's what my understanding of that is.
Correct. So I'm not to interrupt, but I'm remembering back through this conversation. So the density bonus of up to 25% under the existing LR zoning was not going to get them to where they wanted to go. So even with the density bonus, that gap between what was permitted with the existing zoning and a PUD and what the master plan designation was great enough that I wanted to give the Planning Commission the option to or to not exercise the discretion in effectively way up zoning the property through this PUD process. It also, to establish the density bonus, required the submission of a parallel plan, which is a bit of an onerous submission that understandably the property owner or the developer did not want to incur for this.
Right. Onerous or not, though, it would have been a possibility that they could have achieved the bonus. So I want to make that clear to my fellow commissioners that in doing what is requested here by McKenna, we are actually putting a cap on the possibility. So, and I saw Mr. Iaquinto had his hand up.
Thank you, sir. I did want to mention and just kind of help bring this perspective that, this property is literally 1 mile from Main Street and 6 Mile, where we are starting to plan non-motorized pathways to connect our community to other communities as well. This property is in bikeable and even walkable distance to our downtown. So to say that and to think that people will not participate or be active in the downtown Whitmore Lake, I think is naive because it is a very close proximity. So I just wanted to point those facts out as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zarzecki had his hand up earlier.
Yes, my only concern in changing the zoning at this point, since the PUD could go ahead whether it's approved or not, is if we change it to high density residential, that's going to open the door for abutting parcels all the way down to start changing or demanding that they also go with high density. And we will end up with, a mass of high density running alongside of Whitmore Lake Road there. He's already shown on his drawing that there's a potential to add on going north in the future. Are we going to start changing that to high density residential? And where do we stop at that point?
Yeah, I want to make a point that it's not high density residential. It's MR, which is MDR is in the future land use as medium density residential. MR being multifamily, which we actually have in the code in the zoning ordinance. So I just want to make sure that you're not relaying that there's high density involved. I mean, that's the only point I want to make, Mr. Zarzecki, if I may.
Fine.
Mr. Iaquinto.
I do believe that those other parcels that you're referring to, Mr. Zarzecki, I don't believe that they're master planned that way as this parcel is. So I think that would impede those other parcels from having that type of rezoning being allowed or even discussed from the master plan. I believe that's an important factor as well. And I'm agreeing with you. I have that concern as well. And that was one of the things that I looked at, and I didn't see that area as, future plan use for that type of zoning.
I was also going to check that. I didn't have the map available, but you're sure that, Mr. Iaquinto, that it's not the same?
I looked at it. I did look at it on, and I don't have it with me right now. I looked at it when I was reviewing all of this. Right. I'm almost 100% sure. Yes, sir.
As did I, and I just want to make sure that I also agree with that statement. Mr. McNamara.
Yeah, Chair, if I could quickly, this property in question is the westerly limit of what was master planned for the sewer use district, which has a significant impact on the density, obviously going between septic field and having public sewer. So I will just clarify that. This is the westerly limit of what was included in the design criteria that designed the pump stations, the pipes, and the treatment capacity at the plant.
Thank you. Ms. Infante.
Two quick questions. So you're saying then that this future connection to adjacent property of this development continuing to run down would not look like this development continuing to run down. That's very important to know. I guess and again, I hope I'm not confusing, again, the PUD with the rezoning request, but if we were to approve the rezoning to medium density, we're talking about 2 to 4 houses per acre. And it sounded to me like from the public commentary that people are absolutely open to residential development. So why are we looking at such density? I think I'm going to the PUD, so I'm getting a little confusing, because I'm not against the idea of medium residential, that many houses, but this is not that at all. So I would like to be in favor of the rezoning to medium, because I think it is in line with the future master plan, but not if this is, I know that Mr. Zarzecki meant to say medium density, but it really looks like high density to me. So I guess that's really a major concern and a confusion for me when it comes to this vote. And the conversation is helping a lot. Thank you.
I think Julie's answered that a couple of times. It's actually allowed 1 to 4 per acre, and we're not even at 4. Yeah.
It's higher than that, actually. So just to tease this out, the moderate density residential future land use designation gives a range of 1 to 4 acres. That's just the master plan. What is actually permitted under MR zoning, which either that medium density maps to or this mixed use, is about 4 to 6. So the minimum lot size, if you think about it and you divide up an acre into that minimum single family lot size, is 10,000 acres. So that's about 4.4 units per acre. So that's, you're actually under that with this development. It is very compact. And it's a lot more units that were there than before, but it is within the permissive density. And the compactness allows for those generous buffers and the amount of open space, and then the stormwater management areas that are being provided for on the site.
Anyone else? That's from Mr. Zarzecki. Did you have your hand up? No. Mr. Gustafson, I believe it was then.
I was hoping that Ms. Konecki could just give a very brief summary of the allowable density in SR1 and SR2, just for comparison, because it feels to me like going from LR to multifamily residential is quite a jump, and I want to understand what the intermediate steps might be.
Yeah, so the SR2 district, so as I was saying before, the MR for a single family dwelling, the minimum lot size is 10,000. In the SR2, the minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet per single family dwelling with sanitary sewer, and 12,500 without. And then this SR1 is a 1/4 acre lot for a single family, and a 1/2 acre for a 2 family.
Does that help, Mr. Gustafson?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Iaquinto had his hand up.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to, that was a really good point that Julie mentioned. This development is putting at minimum of 100-foot buffer between those residents that are to the west and North Territorial to the south, and then even a larger buffer to Whitmore Lake Road, along with those big open spaces that you see. There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4 large open spaces. And so that's why the development looks dense in nature, but there is a lot of open spaces inside of the development and great buffering zones. And then also I wanted to share that I believe that the rezoning to SR2, it's a dead zoning district. We don't have any opportunity to do that anymore within the community. So that's why, this is appropriate rezoning in this district as well. Thank you.
Those are good points, Mr. Iaquinto, and you're indeed correct. When we do look for the open space design, we are condensing the development. I mean, it's ultimately what you're going to have is that it's going to look more dense. So, Ms. Chick.
And I just wanted to add on to that there's actually 25% of open space there, and there's the 100-foot buffers. Typically, the buffers are 35 feet. So we're being very generous here in providing buffers and open space.
Ms. Infante.
I guess my interpretation of this is that that's open space because it's not buildable. I mean, that's where the water supplies are, and I just don't see how maybe I don't understand this, and I probably don't, but it doesn't look like it would be able to support any construction. So I guess I don't see it as open space in my concept of open space.
Yeah, it can't be programmed or really used. It's just left over.
So I'll try to guide the commission here to an end, I guess. So what we have is, just so everyone understands, is in the PUD discussion that we're going to have next, there's a preliminary site plan, and the developer is also required to come back again to have a final plan on the PUD. So if there are issues regarding the PUD, items, I want to say physical items, those can be discussed regarding the PUD discussion. What we're doing right now is the rezoning section of it. So I don't want to keep crossing the two issues because we're just going to be here all night. And you could relate any kind of site observation that you've seen on the plans and relate it back to the rezoning, and it's just the case that we have to look at the PUD separately, and we will be looking at it twice. So even though we may even approve it, just for instance, if it was approved on the PUD tonight, there are items that would have to be addressed and corrected and brought back to us all over again, even though we are approving the preliminary plan. So I just wanted to make that clear, and hopefully we can still stay on track with the rezoning. So if there's any more questions regarding the zoning or comments, now's the time to hear. Other than that, we'll look for an end on this. Does any other commissioner have comments, questions regarding the rezone? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the request to the Board of Trustees on the rezone.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquinto. Any questions, comments on the motion? Seeing none, Mr. Zarzecki will do a roll call vote.
Thank you. Ms. Chick,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
No.
Mr. Gustafson,
No.
Mr. Iaquinto,
Yes.
Ms. Infante,
No.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
and Zarzecki, no. Fails 4-3.
Failed motion.
4 against.
Thank you. So in this case, Ms. Konecki, we can continue forward to the PUD then?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Once again, I'll try to keep my report short. I know there's a lot to call through here, though, so I want to make sure I give adequate detail. So as the chair mentioned, this is a preliminary PUD plan. Just to recap the process here, the Planning Commission tonight is going to make a recommendation to the board for approval, approve with conditions or deny. The board does the final approval on the preliminary plan, and then you do the same process for final. So what you are looking for here is the site layout, the mix and size of uses, circulation. We can talk about where those open spaces are, but we're looking to kind of set the general overall area plan and then work through with our comments tonight, and then with staff, with the applicant, as well as the board comments, to refine the plan to meet the qualifications of final site plan approval. So there are a number of things in our letter that we've noted that we would like to see improved between now and final. But since we don't feel that they necessarily affect the preliminary plan review criteria here tonight, that's what our recommendation is based on. So there are a number of qualifications for a PUD that this parcel, as we've talked about, meets. And just to touch on a few that we've hit with the rezoning as well. So the proposed type and density shall not result in an unreasonable increase in the need for or burden upon public services, facilities, roads, and utilities. I believe, Mr. McNamara will speak a little bit more to this, but we've already heard about the sewer capacity. And we have also heard a little bit from the developer about the due diligence that they did on this site before even getting to this stage, as well as the fact that this is on some pretty high capacity roadways as far as the township is concerned. The proposed development shall minimize any negative environmental impacts or impacts on surrounding land. This is one of the few parcels in Northfield Township that's large and developable, that doesn't have just a minefield of natural features. We heard a lot of people talk about why isn't development happen closer to downtown. We speak with developers every day. We look at parcels, they are covered with woodlands and wetlands and other things that make it very challenging to do anything of this scale. This site has potentially 2 wetlands that may be regulated that would require equal permits, but mostly avoids them, and has really no landmark trees on there and would avoid those as well. The applicant is proposing 100-foot buffers. The PUD would only technically require 50 from every perimeter. They are doing that to try to respect the neighboring property owners and give them space away from this more compact development site. And we believe, as we stated in our rezoning, that it's consistent with the master plan goals and objectives. I think we talked ourselves blue in the face with the project density section, but just to recap, since the rezoning, even though the Planning Commission is not making a recommendation to approve the rezoning, the master plan does support rezoning of this, or a project of this density, and the PUD could move forward without that. As far as the project design standards, we talked a little bit about the open space. Yes, most of that open space is in green belts and stormwater management areas. The applicant, has at least made an effort to provide some pathways through those areas, but has designated a few of those open spaces, one for recreational, like a soccer field and maybe some other fields, and a gazebo in the center of the site, and then a dog park to the north end of the site. I think we could provide, or we would want to see some additional details, and we are open to Planning Commissioner comments as well about the programming for those sites that you would want to see between preliminary and final. But I think that the location generally makes sense as to, all of the different areas of the development are pretty well accessible to those open spaces, and that's really what we're looking for. We don't want it just shoved in a corner. We want them integrated throughout the site. Informal recreation and pathways are provided throughout. This includes a connection along Whitmore Lake Road to those front properties and through the development up to those potential outlots. I think we would want to see those connections strengthened when those outlots develop. But in general, there's good pedestrian pathways provided throughout. And we think that the vehicular circulation proposed makes a lot of sense with 2 access points. And we don't think that the way that the site is designed will necessarily create a lot of cut-through traffic there, but it provides 2 ingress and egress points for that much traffic to dump out on one side or the other. In terms of setbacks, the required setbacks, we wrote this to be applicable to the MR district, but it would meet the LR as well. They just have to be provided around the perimeter. I think we would have to now check based on the LR zoning, that those distances are maintained between each of the uses. The only concern I would have is between, the last row of multifamily between that and Lot A, but there's 35 feet minimum. And 100-foot setbacks, as I mentioned, required all the way around. We did mention in our report that there is a proposed expansion of the right-of-way proposed for North Territorial and Whitmore Lake Road that's noted on the site plan. So I think between preliminary and final, we would want to see that buffer adjusted to just account for that future right-of-way expansion, as well as the alignment of the sidewalk. I think that just makes sense, especially because Washtenaw County might require, turn lanes or something like that coming in and out of the site as well. A lot of the rest of these are about walkways and interior connections, which I think I've spoken to. And I will leave it to Mr. McNamara to speak to utilities and stormwater management on the site. I did add a comment in here about the architecture. It's not technically within your PUD requirements, nor is it mentioned elsewhere in your ordinance where we would look for residential design guidelines for this area. But we've noted that we would like to see, if possible, the applicant use the same quality of materials. There's like a stacked stone detail along the foundation on the single family detached that's not provided on the townhomes. So we would I think that it would be reasonable to have consistency and high quality of design across the site, limiting that vinyl as much as possible on the finish. I know it's a low maintenance finish, but the stone accents provide a slightly higher quality. There are 4 criteria that the Planning Commission needs to find for the preliminary PUD, in addition to general conformance with those design standards. And we feel that even without that MR rezoning underlying, the site meets it. I think the big question the Planning Commission may have is this shall not change the essential character of the surrounding area. I think this is a hard provision for your PUD ordinance to include when the master plan vision is so far from what the existing zoning is. So that's going to be something for the Planning Commission to discuss and debate. But similar to our rezoning letter, it's our opinion that the future land use designation and the vision put forth in the master plan is one of change and development. And that is consistent with the community vision, even though it represents a departure from what is there. And finally, the PUD shall be under single ownership and control. Just to circle back and close the loop on this is why the outlots are not included in this PUD. We do think it would be advisable that as part of the final, the conditions of the final PUD approval, which become kind of your PUD record agreement that governs this site, that there be provisions in there for cross-access easements, stormwater management and maintenance for any kind of shared amenities and connections to those outlots that would go with the sale of that land. Just some sort of provision to integrate, to make a good faith effort to integrate those into this PUD. So at this time, we find that the applicant has met the minimum requirements for the preliminary PUD and recommend that the Planning Commission recommend the preliminary plan for approval to the board. I believe that the items that we've identified in our report as needing improvement can be done between preliminary and final, but should the Planning Commission disagree, you can absolutely make a vote to table consideration tonight, but I would urge you to have kind of clear direction for the applicant to make improvements or provide additional information to you in order to make that tabling recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Konecki. I'd like to go to the OHM, Mr. McNamara, for his review, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You have my detailed report dated March 30th. I won't read through that, but I'll just, cover generally. At this stage, at the preliminary stage, there's really 4 things from an engineering perspective that we're looking at. It's the water service, the sewer service, stormwater management, and the road infrastructure and traffic impacts. And the considerations for each of those is not have all the details been worked out yet. It's can they be worked out? Can it work? So with that in mind, I'll step through those. The water service, I think the applicant mentioned earlier, they are proposing that this project be serviced by what's termed at the state level as a public water supply. It's because of the number of users that are on a common well. That's not to say that this is a public water supply in the sense that the township is managing the water supply or the system. That's not the case. The water system, the wells, the treatment, and the site piping would be owned and operated by the development, the association. And the determination of whether or not there's sufficient groundwater to support this development without negatively impacting the surrounding properties and wells is a determination that's yet to be made. And I think the applicant has mentioned that earlier, that they've held off on that stage of analysis until they, have at least preliminary approval from the township. So there's other steps that need to happen to confirm that it's a viable water source for the project. And there are, again, extensive state procedures to go through to determine that. But assuming that that's found, that there is the aquifer that can support this development, they are proposing site piping along with hydrants for fire protection to support the residential component and the future outlots. The sewer service we talked about already. There is a connection available just to the southeast of the project. The system, as we talked about before, it was designed to accommodate this acreage, and there's capacity at the pump station at just north of North Territorial and 23, and within the pipes that get into the treatment plant and the treatment plant itself. So sewer service, sanitary sewer service is not a concern. Stormwater management, it's a large site. So there is going to be converting it from a tilled farm to a developed property is going to increase the stormwater runoff. Their plan that they proposed at this time does set aside 5 acres for dedicated stormwater management, detention, retention areas, along with the site piping to get it to that location. One of the recommendations in our letter was that because the stormwater area, the management area is going to support multiple residential properties as well as the future commercial, is that they work through the Drain Commission to set up a stormwater district, which will codify the requirements of the maintenance of that system. So that will need to be taken care of, but conceptually the project has allocated sufficient property to address the stormwater management requirements. And lastly is the roads and traffic, which has been mentioned a number of times here. The applicant has, their engineer has prepared a traffic study, and they looked at not only the immediate impact of the development, the location of the curb cuts themselves and what that would mean as far as turning movements on North Territorial in Whitmore Lake, but the study was expanded to include both the interchange of North Territorial and 6 Mile. And that study had some recommendations. There was some level of service. Some of the level of service out there currently isn't great. So any addition to that is going to make it worse than it is today. So they have acknowledged that. What I can tell you is that the requirements that are associated with the improvements on the roads, because they're under the Washtenaw County jurisdiction, are ultimately up to them. We can make recommendations of what we would like to see, but it's premature to do that because what I can tell you is that traffic study is still under review with the road commission. So ultimately, whatever turn lanes or improvements even off-site, a mile down the road that are necessitated by in order for the road commission to grant a curb cut permit would be a requirement that would be incorporated as part of the subsequent process here. So with all those things being said, from a preliminary standpoint, the project is a viable project as long as everything I've noted there is addressed between now and final site plan. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. And for the record, I see the fire department had a review, which is included in the packet. There may be some items there that could be addressed.
If I might chime in on that report, because I did speak with the fire chief. He wanted to reiterate, even though it's not clear in his letter, that similar to Marcus's and my comments, that he felt that those issues could be addressed between preliminary and final.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Chick.
And there was also an email from our building inspector, Mr. Weiland. It came in rather late today. I don't know if all the commissioners actually got it, but he also made some recommendations that would have to be included as well before final.
Thank you. I did see that. I was going to make it a point of discussion, but that's fine. So yeah, that could be looked at by the fire department for further review. I have a suggestion to the planning commission. I make a motion for a 5-minute recess.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Chick. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. We'll return back here just after, I don't know, 9:46. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see everybody's back. Miss Infante back? I don't think. We'll give her a minute. Okay, I see we're all back. So, okay, we'll continue with the meeting. We reviewed the reports. We covered the fire report. Now we'll go to discussion on the case. Any commissioners with comments, questions? Mr. Iaquinto.
Yes, this is from Mr. Gronow. One of the things that I definitely would like to see, and it's hard, I don't see it on the plans, I was looking through the details, is a non-motorized pathway along Whitmore Lake Road. So I have that question.
I think I can answer that, Mr. Iaquinto. Are you talking about just a pedestrian pathway or a multi-use?
It's hard to even, because again, the prints that I have are small, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard even to see a sidewalk or a multi-use non-motorized pathway sidewalk along Whitmore Lake Road.
I believe there's a 5-foot crushed pathway that runs up there. Is well, the crushed stone pathway is what's there now.
Yeah, coming out of the stub of the driveway there, and it runs all the way along that landscape berm and dips a little bit towards the stormwater basin area and then all the way up to North Territorial. It's shaded in gray, unlike the other sidewalks.
Okay, and it's crushed stone or concrete?
Crushed stone on the plans.
Yep,
okay.
And the rest are paved.
I'd prefer to see a, concrete sidewalk, of that width, preferably, instead of crushed stone. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Ms. Chick has a hand up.
Yeah, I just want to comment on Mr. Iaquinto's comment. I totally agree. I think that any pathway in the area should be accessible to anybody, especially if you're going to have seniors there. They're with walkers or they're with power chairs or wheelchairs, and crushed stone might make it more difficult for them to get around. So whatever is there should be accessible to anybody that lives there.
Mr. McNamara has comment, and then I see Mr. Zarzecki after.
Yeah, quickly. Thank you, Chair. So if it's the Planning Commission's desire to have a conventional sidewalk in that along that frontage, I would agree that a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk would be appropriate. If the desire is a mixed use path, the current ASTO guidelines call for a 12-foot wide paved path for that. So I would agree that a crushed stone path it doesn't meet either one of those requirements. So that would be a topic of discussion, whether a 5-foot wide sidewalk, conventional sidewalk, or a 12-foot wide mixed use path would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Before I go to Mr. Zarzecki, I saw Ms. Chick. Is it a comment regarding this again?
Just real quickly in regard to the soccer field that's mentioned, I'm pretty sure that was just a concept for the area, but I think like an all-purpose type athletic field that could be used for anything, because you might not have people there that want to play soccer. So I think it would be better to have something a little more versatile.
Thank you. Did anyone have more comment about the path? Was that your raised hand, Mr. Gustafson, for that?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I agree with Mr. Iaquinto and Ms. Chick about having it be accessible. I'm not necessarily in favor of a concrete pathway, but a pathway that meets the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act is totally necessary. And I support Mr. Iaquinto's repeated comments of the connectivity of this neighborhood to the downtown area. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. Mr. Zarzecki.
My comment refers back to our memo from our building official, which talks about the fire apparatus access road and the fact that the trucks are only carrying 150 feet of hose, and in some cases it looks like they're not going to be able to reach all surfaces as required by the International Fire Code. So at that point, this drawing or these layouts need to go back and be reevaluated, because if there's going to have to be different access, it may either reduce the amount of units or change the pattern of the roads, which makes this whole plan at this point moot.
Thank you, Mr. Zarzecki. And there was also and giving Mr. Weiland the credit on these topics, but there's also the concern regarding the width of the roads and a possible future parking, or there would be no parking on the roads. So either if Ms. Konecki or Mr. Gronow wants to respond to either of those comments, I think those are valid.
I don't think I would be able to comment on those specifically. That might be a question better answered by Mr. Gronow, or perhaps if he has his engineer present to respond to the potential impacts of those comments on the plan. Mr. Gronow, are you still there?
If not, that's okay, Ms. Konecki.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry. I had to unmute him. I got it.
Sorry. And yes, the engineer has some information to share pertaining to that issue, and perhaps a few others. I don't know if that would be best suited for the format tonight, to just summarize and address all of the concerns that we've heard. Maybe give a chance to hear more concerns before we respond, and then we can maybe just close with our feedback to everyone's comments. Would the chair prefer us to do that, or address one?
Yeah, that's fine, because you're going to have more obviously more issues to address. So,
okay, thank you.
Mr. Dwyer.
It's one of my main concerns here is what is the effect on the township, and I know the traffic situation is mostly at the oversight of the road commission, but that intersection at Territorial Whitmore Lake Road, they did a traffic study based on 2015 count, and the raw data for the count was from 2012, and they've assumed zero growth. So it seems as though they've taken a very given themselves a very generous model here in how to look at the traffic, and they're going to tinker with some turn lanes and some the lighting pattern and timing. But if you've ever been through that intersection and then imagine another 500 cars coming through at rush hour, it seems to me, my sense is that will be completely overloaded. And now's the time to address it before you've got a building on every corner and you have no room to do any improvements. My sense is there should be a roundabout going in with this development in order to get that many cars out of that development onto 23 twice a day. I don't think we're going to do it with tinkering with the light and a few dedicated right turn lanes, when in reality everyone's turning left. I would really like to see something done there in conjunction with this development. Will take care of that intersection for the long term, and the only way I see that is with a roundabout.
Thank you. Ms. Infante.
If I could follow up on that, because I do drive down Nixon and the roundabouts had to be put in because of all of those developments, the residential developments, between, basically all the way down Nixon into Ann Arbor. And My question, and maybe somebody can answer this, is who would pay for that? Because I don't see that there's anything other than a roundabout that would work. And who pays for one of those if that ends up being the determination, if that's an appropriate question?
I'll leave Ms. Konecki or Mr. McNamara respond.
Yeah, I can answer that. As I mentioned before, the traffic study, although it was submitted to the township in earlier mid-February, was just recently submitted to the Road Commission. So they have just begun the review. However, I guess the direct answer to your question is any impacts that need to be mitigated because of this development would be the responsibility of the developer. So whatever the solution is determined that's necessary, those costs would be borne by the developer, not the township, not the road commission, not the taxpayers, not anyone else. And if the cost of those developments exceeded what the developer was willing to do, then they presumably would walk away from the project. But it would be their responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Ms. Chick? You're muted, Ms. Chick.
So if you actually read the traffic study, it does give recommendations for North Shore Trail Road and Whitmore Lake Road, 6 Mile Whitmore Lake Road and Coyle Road, a whole list on page 4. And then there's also recommendations inside of the report, which is very lengthy. But we still have to hear from Washtenaw County Road Commission what their solution is. But they pretty much did a good job, I think, of studying it. And they did account for the fact that this was done during COVID and ran it through their programs, several programs, to calculate projected use. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Chick. Mr. Iaquinto?
Thank you. My question is, Washtenaw County Road Commission, I'm asking for clarity by Marcus. I understand that they are the ones that decide what would need to be done. And that is during the preliminary to the final site plan for the PUD. Is that correct, Marcus? And then that would be part of the final site plan for the PUD. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Just to clarify, the traffic report that you have in front of you was prepared by the applicant's engineer. And so, anecdotally speaking, not specific to this project, but typically the engineers that are working on behalf of a developer are going to favor anything that's a gray area in the favor of the developer. So that report, although it does include suggested improvements or recommendations for improvements, either near to the site at the curb cut locations or at the interchanges, still hasn't been vetted by Washtenaw County. Washtenaw County is going to review that, and my expectation is they're going to have a similar opinion, but probably a little bit different, that will say that slightly more is needed, and maybe a lot more, perhaps as much as a roundabout at Territorial North and Whitmore Lake. Whatever the Planning Commission chooses to do at the preliminary stage, or even by the final stage, we should have a better sense of this. But if the Planning Commission wanted to move forward with any sort of approval of this, it should absolutely be subject to the review and approval of the Washtenaw County Road Commission and incorporation of whatever requirements associated with road improvements as part of the developer's responsibility.
Thank you, Mr. McNamara. Mr. Iaquinto?
Thank you. I was just saying thank you, sir.
And that is listed on your report, Mr. McNamara, correct?
It is.
Yep. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Mr. Gustafson.
Mr. Gronow mentioned one of his motivations for developing this project is to provide affordable houses for young families and places to live for people that don't want the burden of living in a single family house anymore. And I think those are admirable goals. He also mentioned that he doesn't think of people just as a number, that he wants. I wrote down what he said. I can't recall it right now, but the fact that there's such limited variety in the townhomes, limited variety in the layout of the houses, this doesn't feel very personal. It just looks like he's packing in as much as possible. He may be building these in a way to limit their first costs and to cut down on people's mortgages, but I don't really think of vinyl siding and vinyl windows as long-term durable materials that contribute to lowering people's maintenance costs over time. This plan could be in North Carolina or Northfield Township. It doesn't appear to have any respect to the location of the sunrise, the sunset, no opportunities for passive solar or even solar panels on roofs. It's a very conventional layout. And I think I think that makes it out of character with our township and with the surrounding neighborhoods or surrounding land uses.
Ms. Infante?
I could just follow up on that. When Mr. Gronow first introduced himself, he said he was retiring and he wanted this to be the signature development. He talked a little bit about that. And sir, I completely respect you for that. I also respect very much the desire to provide affordable housing. But you invited us to go look at your properties, and I did. And I was so thrilled when I saw the Chestnut developments, the quality design. I looked at your videos and all of the information about, I'm trying to remember the phrase that you used, but that it's just such a mark above. And so I was very excited because I figured we were going to have, something like the developments in Marion Township here. And then we got this plan and I was disappointed. And I don't know if you are at all entertaining the idea of a scaled down version of this that would allow for more variety, more, like you say, exquisite attention to detail, that you build each home as if it were your own. There just seemed to me to be a lot of contradictions in terms of, or I guess in terms of my expectations from what I've seen you do, which are beautiful developments and homes, and then this plan for our township. Not to mention, they're called luxury town homes, and they're actually apartments. So it's, in my mind, that's temporary housing. It's not long-term housing. And I was just hoping perhaps that you'll receive a lot of this feedback and maybe consider revising the plan to something that is more in line with what you've done in your other developments, which really is stunning. And I would be so sorry to lose you. I would be sorry to lose the opportunity to have a gorgeous development like I've seen you do. But to me, it does seem like, luxury townhomes, which are actually vinyl-sided apartments, it's just, I was hoping for something more for our township. We really struggle with the aesthetics in our township, and what we've got is our rural character. I think there should be a balance there that's complementary. So that's my experience of your invitation, and how much I love the work you do. And I hope maybe you'd consider revisiting. Thank you.
Great comment, Ms. Infante. Mr. Zarzecki.
I agree with Mrs. Infante. We need to have more diversity in the appearance of the townhouses or luxury apartments or whatever they want to call them. But I look at this and how it's going to be proposed. It's what I used to call ticky-tacky. all in a row. Same thing, everyone's going to look exactly the same. It's to me, it might seem a little strange, but it looks like it's a government development, government subsidized housing.
So if everyone's on the architectural point, I think we've covered a lot of it. I did have some comments also, such as, more masonry and less vinyl siding.
Right.
Even a possibility of, and Mr. Gustafson brought this up earlier tonight regarding different elevations on the same floor plan, so that there was some variety other than just two of each, and a possibility of, and I don't know if it's even possible, but to not have the same models consecutively, or limit the number of consecutive models that are all identical. It's been done in other municipalities, but I'm not sure that we can tackle that here. But I think that's some good feedback regarding the architectural perspective, and I also did agree with Ms. Konicke's review about that same thing. So, is there anyone else have other comments, Mr. Iaquinto?
I was curious to know how much the Marion Township homes start at, and what the price comparison is for these. And if Mr. Gronow was looking at, again, it could still be a very first-class development, but if he's looking at, starter homes at a different price contention than the Marion Township, then that would lead to the reason why he's got more vinyl siding than stone per se. So, again, that's an important factor to understand, the price of those homes comparatively to the price that he's going after for these homes.
Ms. Chip.
So that brings up a question. Are these spec homes? I mean, are they just going to be built and then he's going to sell them? Or like in my subdivision, we had maybe 5 elevations to choose from. And, the houses are pretty similar, but it's a nice subdivision. But can people choose options if they wanted to upgrade? But I agree with the vinyl siding thing. More stone, more masonry for sure, which I know is more expensive for the builder, but that's all I have.
I guess so, Ms. Konicke, I don't know if you can answer Ms. Chick's question or not.
I do not know whether these are spec homes or they're going to be, sold off lot by lot with options. This might be a good point if you'd like for Mr. Gronow to jump in just on that price comparison and the question of the spec home or the models, or we can hold to the end. I'm keeping track of all the questions.
No, that's fine. If you'd like to comment, that's fine if you'd like to.
All right.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, great comments. Awesome. So let me address them one at a time if I could, regarding the Mr. Zarzecki and Ms. Infante. You've pointed out vinyl. I want to tell you that vinyl is as wide, deep, and far as you can get. The vinyl that is used by national home builders comes in an unmarked box, comes out of Canada. Nobody knows where it's ultimately made. It's so thin it blows off in a stiff breeze. It's a very cheap product. The standard siding for Chestnut is made by Royal. The basic builder grade siding is an 039 thickness. It's a very thin, wimpy siding, has a single nailing fin on it. Our standard for everything we build in vinyl is not a bad thing. It's getting a very bad rap here tonight. Vinyl is a very high quality product if you buy the right vinyl. The vinyl we use is Royal 044 thickness. That's a very thick siding. It doesn't blow off in the wind. It has a double nailing fin. When it goes on the house, it does not come off. Also, it has a great UV factor to it. Vinyl is sold in various price categories. And when you get up into the higher end and the bandwidths there, you are paying almost as much for vinyl as you're getting into some of the cultured stone products. However, vinyl is proven to be a more durable, maintenance-free product. Now, when you're in a fixed income and retired, and you're leasing a luxury townhome / apartment, I know the nomenclature is in question, but really these units are built, and I don't know how many folks on this board have a building background, but I will tell you, there is a night and day difference in how you can build an apartment or a townhome. You can use 24-inch 2x4 construction, for example, 24-inch spacing 2x4 construction. Chestnut standard is 18-inch spacing in 2x6 construction. You can meet code with bat insulation R19 in your walls. Chestnut does not do that. Chestnut uses a closed cell foam insulation, far more expensive than a standard bat insulation. Why? Because it saves energy. Energy is where our company has gone over the last 4 years. Do you know that there's only one builder in Livingston County that meets Energy Star standards in everything that it builds, and that's Chestnut? Why? It costs the builder a whole lot more money to do that, right? But when the house or the apartment is completed, we receive a third-party independent review and a test that says your construction meets a HERS rating, which is your home energy rating score, HERS. A score of 100 means you meet code. That means all the boxes are checked, you get your C of O, and you meet code. Anything less than that, it's just like golf. It's better. Do you know that our homes and our apartments have reached the highest standard of Energy Star certifications? So high, in fact, that the Department of Housing and Urban Development has approved Chestnut for financing. And you can only get that when you meet this requirement. This is the highest bar possible in energy consumption. In addition to all of that, the separation wall between units. Tons of ways you can do that. Redwood is one of our inspirations. When I looked at Redwood 5 years ago, I thought, wow, these guys are doing something that people really are responding to. It's awesome. Then I visited the job site and I watched how they put them together. I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but I will tell you it's done to the minimum code requirement, and the building departments all fight with them when they get their certifications and approvals and final C of Os. You call the Livingston County Building Department. You talk to Jim Rowell. He is the head of the Livingston County Building Department. You ask Jim Rowell, what is the quality of the Chestnut multifamily product? He will tell you it is the highest quality product he has ever seen. It exceeds all building code requirements by a lot. Everything we do goes far beyond, and I'm sorry to be so passionate here, but I'm hearing some assumptions that I think are just completely off base here. You're perceiving what we're doing here as something cheap and throwaway, and it's not a high standard and needs more brick. I'm trying to fit a budget here that is in so much need. And every time folks say we want more stone, brick, these architecturals are not variety enough, sure, we can pump this all up to $400,000 per unit and nobody will be able to afford it. And that'll nuke the project. I can tell you it'll just nuke the project. It's done. It's dead on arrival. Everything you're seeing in front of you is done to the, not the highest, but the super highest quality standard possible. And I will invite every one of you to come we're building one right now on M59, just east of Tooley Road in Howell. It's under construction. I can walk you through the framing, the mechanicals, the insulation, the windows, the doors, the siding. I do put stone, by the way, on every multifamily unit we build. I'm not sure why that got missed in the review, but there is stone and a variety of different elevations that we break it up with colors and shake and vinyl, and everything is different. I heard this looks like government housing. I'm ready to scream when I hear that kind of thing. You don't know what government housing looks like until you see what government housing is. This is so far and above that. It's unimaginable that I could even hear that comment. Now, you can vote this down, you can kick me out of the neighborhood, and I'll just take my licks and say, I'm sorry I couldn't do anything in Northfield Township. But folks, you need to drill down deeper. I'm glad for these questions. I am happy to answer them one at a time. Ms. Chick asked about spec homes. Are there going to be specs? There's two differences here. You have a single family component and you have a multifamily component. Both are built to the same quality standard. I'm not cheapening out on either one. But I'm trying to make sure that a 25-year-old with an engineering degree making $35,000, $40,000, and maybe his wife is working a part-time job, can afford the mortgage. So every time you say it's too dense, that means it's going to cost more per house. If there's less density, it's more cost per house because the roads cost the same, the sewer costs the same, the pipe costs the same. And when you cut down on density, you increase the price of the house. That's a fact. So the notion that less is more is actually less means there's no project because nobody can afford to build it. The market in Genoa Township, where you saw Chestnut Springs, Chestnut Crossing, and several other projects that we've done there, Genoa Township has comps and neighborhoods that are in the $700 to $1 million range all around me over there. They're all around me over there. Where are my comps in Northfield Township to support that kind of construction? I'm sorry, but there are none, zero. Northfield has been sort of stagnant for a long time. I'm trying to bring something that makes sense there, that fits there, that the appraisers can say. Remember, the appraisers have to agree the value's there. If I was to build a Chestnut Springs on this parcel, you know what my sales would be? Zero. Because nobody's going to build a $700,000 house at North Territory and Whitmore Lake Road. It just will not happen. So I'm just trying to help folks understand this is a fantastic opportunity. I am going to put my heart and soul into it. You will not be disappointed. I will send you as a follow-up all of our Energy Star ratings. I invite you to call Jim Rowell at the Livingston County Building Department. Ask him what kind of product Chestnut builds in terms of its multi and single family. The specs, sure, there will be, let me tell you about specs. Specs are great because you know what you don't have? You don't have a customer interfering with your construction. And what that means is you can bring your product in on budget and on time. So what we would like to do is put a few specs up as inventory homes. When they're completed, we put them on the market. Now I have a designer. One of my designers is in my office full time. The other designer happens to be my wife. She does all of our decorating, all our color choices, all our aggregate choices. And if you go through those communities and you go through Chestnut Crossing, you'll see there's a lot of variety. We bump the roof lines up and down. You know, that's very expensive. A roof line that's straight gable is much less expensive to build than an offset gable. There's siding in that offset. There's more shingles, more roofing, more time, more trim, more drip edge. Everything is more, but it breaks up the elevation. We also add gables to those roof lines to break up the gable and the view line when you're looking at the units. The units alternate in color, and in the gable end on the garages, we go to shake. That 044 shake royal siding is bloody expensive. And by the way, every road in Chestnut Crossing, not an asphalt road, not something that's going to crumble and break up in a few years that all the residents are going to be complaining about. These are 7-inch, 3,500 PSI, fiber mesh, steel rebar, concrete roads. They're built for the duration so that it's a quality neighborhood now. It's a quality neighborhood 30 years from now because the roads aren't falling apart. The shingles on the house are 40-year architectural shingles. The siding is 044. It's 2x6 framing. It's Energy Star certified. The flooring is the thickest LVT flooring with no air. The HVAC system is the highest efficiency HVAC system. Our plumbing is some of the best plumbing that Moen can sell you. And our contractors are some of the best people you've ever met. I invite you to go to the project there on M59 in Thule and take a drive through and see what we're doing there. So I'd like to invite Brent, our engineer, to follow up a little bit. And I apologize for being so passionate about this. I don't mean to offend anybody, but some of you have the wrong idea about what this is going to look like and it's not a negative to the township. You got one opportunity to get this done right now. It fits in every way possible. Your planner has recommended it. Your engineer has told us that you've got 10% use on that pump station that the taxpayers funded. Don't we have an obligation to the taxpayers to pay some of that money down on that bond debt? And I'm going to be paying fees with every time I connect it, go to benefit the township. We got a walking trail, and I appreciate the comment about the crushed stone. I'll make that a concrete walk all the way. A concrete walk all the way, no problem. And that connectivity to the downtown, I think, is important. The connectivity to the school is important. I'll make the off-site improvements that we've talked about. By the way, I was a little offended by the engineer saying it's the developer's traffic consultant. Well, sure it is, because nobody else is going to pay for it. I have to pay for it. That doesn't mean that the guy is favoring the developer. He's not. The Washtenaw County Road Commission has to approve whatever improvements are necessary there. By the way, if you do nothing or I'm denied, they've already admitted this is operating at a sub-level. All these areas around the subject property are underperforming, causing backups and problems. Our project fixes that. It doesn't make it worse, it makes it better. So I think our traffic engineer might be on the line. He might be able to add to that conversation, answer some questions about the traffic directly, but I would really appreciate some patience with us. I will address your concerns. I really want to do this project for you. Brent, if you're on the line, I'd really invite you to chime in here with some of the engineering answers that have been asked.
Thank you.
So with that, though, I don't know if his engineer is going to speak, but I also had a question to Mr. Gronow. If he plans on phasing the construction on this site, perhaps he can answer that while we're waiting a minute.
Sure. The proposed phasing is all of the infrastructure on the site, including the multifamily and the single family, is all to be built in one phase because of the water supply. We have to put the pipe in the ground to connect everybody so everybody's got water. If you're going to put pipe in the ground, you might as well put your road in the ground because it's all in the right of way of the road. I'll build all of the infrastructure all in one phase. The vertical construction, again, on the multifamily, we'll do it in two phases. We'll do half of it first, half of it second. On the single family, that'll commence at the same time as the multifamily because with the road infrastructure in place, the sewer and water in place, all of the off-site improvements in place, you got to pay for all that stuff. You got to pay for the turn lane on North Territorial. You got to pay for the redevelopment of all the off-site improvements. To pay for all that stuff, you need income. And for me to survive and be financially viable, we need to have as much going on as possible. And that's actually better to get it all done at one time or as soon as possible so that you have that dynamic of the association being fluid and funded. Your residential community now has the ability to put its kids in the school system. This whole concept about it's going to drain public services. Oh my gosh, what a ridiculous notion. I'm sorry, I got to be forceful here. It's crazy because the property taxes from this development alone are going to far exceed whatever perceived cost of increase in public services there might be out there. By the way, you can verify that through the Livingston County Sheriff's Office. Have them run a check on public service calls to the Chestnut Crossing project in Howell as it relates to the general service calls of any other apartment community that they might see there. You will see that the quality of the people in that project, we have a requirement for people to meet a 675 credit score before they can even be considered there. That means you don't have delinquencies. Do you know we are 100% occupied at Chestnut Crossing with zero delinquencies? Think about that, the quality of that clientele there. They have income and they're spending it in your community. So, I mean, I hope that addresses that particular point.
It does. I think you covered a lot of topics, Mr. Gronow. We are this is a first time review. We're trying to give you our feedback, whether or not you apply it for the next review at the final PUD review. That's up to you. We are giving you our honest upfront opinions on what we've been provided, like it or not, insulting or not. You're going to find we have an architect, a building official, another code enforcement or code official person, engineering type. So, you know, the people on this board, this commission are well aware what where you're going with this and what it entails and costs involved. So just so you get an idea, but we're gonna throw our feedback out there and we're gonna get to vote either way on this tonight, and you can take it for where it is from there.
Thank you. I know that Mr. Levanway has been waiting to address a couple of the comments as well. I don't know if he's available there or not.
I did not see him in the participant list. So, Brent, if you are under some other name, will you please raise your hand so I can acknowledge you? Mr. Gronow, you may want to just text him or see if you can get him on the phone, and we can loop him in hopefully in just a moment or two.
Give me a moment if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay. While he's doing that, is there any other comments, questions regarding the reviews? By any other?
I did have a few comments.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Gustafson. And then I see Ms. Chick after.
I appreciate Mr. Gronow's passion So don't apologize for that. You know, it shows us that you're really interested. I appreciate your description of the products and your construction techniques. You are correct. Not all vinyl is made the same. But vinyl does get a bad rap because it's a known carcinogen. And so there's different opinions on it. You mentioned yourself that the vinyl that you use is of the cost and quality almost to cultured stone. So I think some of our concerns to mix up the materials should not break your budget. It's great that you build high-rated Energy Star homes. You mentioned that HERS homes, HERS 100 is code compliant. You didn't actually say what HERS ratings your homes achieve on average. And HERS Energy Star is not the greatest, is not the highest level of a building standard. There's Living Building Challenge, LEED Platinum, Passive House. There's other systems. So the last thing I would mention is, you know, we may have had negative feedback to our perception of the plans because we're reacting to the information that's in the plans. If you only show us 4 elevations, then I can't tell that you would propose 15 different materials and 15 different elevations, all on the same plan, but maybe different elevations. So the architectural drawings do not communicate your intent the way that you described it verbally. So I would say in a future round, make sure that your documents cover the full intent of the project. You know, the last thing that I noticed that's just a little bit concerning is on sheet A2, there's these architectural floor plans, and it says architectural house design, country floor plan, upper floor, number 202258. These are just stock home plans. You know, like I said earlier, there's aspects of this development that feel like it could be in North Carolina or Northfield Township. And the fact that I see that these are based on stock plans that could be purchased and built anywhere does make it feel a little less luxury or specific to Northfield Township. But I think that those issues could be addressed through the variety of materials that you stated you plan to use.
Thank you. I think it was Ms. Chick next.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Mr. Gronow for the information he provided. I found it helpful in answering some of the questions that we were looking for. And I also think as a preliminary submittal here that there's a lot of information here that from our engineer and from our planner that was very helpful as well. And I appreciate the fact of with all the recommendations that they put into this PUD request that we could move forward on it, at least in my opinion, and with the conditions and recommendations that are expressed in the report that we've gotten. So thank you.
Ms. Infante.
Yes, on the point of stock plans, the development that you have, Sir Fiddler Grove, has stock plans. They're absolutely beautiful homes. They are the luxury ranch that you have 2 to 5 bedrooms starting at $374 a home for, you know, almost 2,000 square feet. They're beautiful homes, and they're not a whole lot more than just one of these walk-ups. So I guess, again, this might just be my personal hope is that you'll reconsider doing something that is closer to Fiddler Grove than to Chestnut Crossings, because your work is beautiful, and I don't think that this is the gem or the signature property that I guess you led me to expect when I looked at your other work.
Mr. Zarzecki.
One additional clarification. it appears that we have basements in the single family, but there's no basement in the townhouse. And I deduce that by the fact there's no stairway going down, where there is one shown in the single family. So these townhouses are, I assume, on a rat wall, because I do not see a utility room listed. And I know these are only stock drawings, but that's something else we need to be aware of as to how this is actually constructed. And just for Mr. Gronow's information, when I first left the service many years ago, I did live in government housing, so I know what it is.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Konecki, after all these comments, do you still feel these items could be addressed upon approval, or should be conditional? What is your thought?
I think they can be addressed. I think we, I noticed we finally got Brent on the line here, the Mr. Gronow's engineer. If we want to hear, I think specifically back to those items raised by the building official about the street widths with on-street parking. I think that's probably answered by the fact that each unit has 2 spaces in a garage, which meets the requirement, plus additional spaces in the driveway, but perhaps he has comments on that, as well as the length of the hose on the truck, because I think that could actually impact the layout here. It might not impact too much, but it would be good to.
Yes, I think we should talk about that if he's able to. Thank you.
All right. Brent, are you still here? Can you just raise your hand again so I can spot you? There we go. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, Brent. We can hear you.
Oh, good. Had a few technical difficulties. I apologize, but thank you for the opportunity to take a few minutes. It's been a long meeting. It's past 10:30. So I think several important points. The first is, this development, we've put a lot of effort and thought into the layout. We do certainly have meaningful open spaces, and they are well scattered throughout the development. We do have the 100-foot buffers around the perimeter, which, by the way, do not count towards the 25%. So we have actually 25% open space in addition to those 100-foot buffers. With regard to the building official letter, we haven't seen that letter, but and having to do with the road widths. So we do have visitor parking in the multifamily, and we do have 2-car garages with 2-car driveways for parking. So there is certainly ample parking in the multifamily. Single family is, of course, we don't have visitor parking, but we'll have the 2-car garages with the 2-car driveways. Plus, those roads are wide enough to have the on street parking on one side, and then the other side would be signed for no parking. So hopefully that addresses that question, or the comment about the hose length for the fire department. So if we need to add some hydrants in the development, we would certainly do that, and I think that would probably accommodate that comment, although again, I have not seen that one. So that's my thought there. Obviously, the circulation is more than sufficient for the fire department, the road circulation. So we've certainly taken that into account. That is always a very important design element for projects these days. Would like to also mention a few more things. We do intend to have private roads. We will have the on-site water system, which will be paid for by the developer and will be maintained by the developer and the association. I already spoke about the open spaces and the amenities. The public sewer has already been talked about, and that's available. as is the infrastructure at the interchange. So, when we worked with Steve on the development, we of course very early on, besides gauging the temperature of the township, we look at the location, we look at the surrounding properties, we look at design elements such as buffers and berms and landscape, and all of that comes together to the plan that you have before you. Obviously, Steve has spoken to the architecture and can speak to it, but from a planning perspective, we believe we're delivering a product that's needed in the township. It's a good layout. The accesses are in the appropriate locations. And I do hope that I've answered some of the questions. We do have a lot of work ahead of us. We have the water supply work, we have the road commission work, we have the drain commission work, but all that comes after this first step and prior to coming back to you folks for final. So I think with that being said, hopefully that does clarify a few things. If you do have any further questions, I'm finally on the call and available to answer them.
Thank you. Any commissioners have any more specific questions? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments, questions regarding the PUD? And seeing none, I will make motion to recommend approval of preliminary PUD plan to the Board of Trustees.
I'll support.
Ms. Chick? I'm sorry, was it Ms. Chick supported?
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on that motion? My comment being, okay, Mr. Dwyer.
Well, to me, this seems very, very preliminary. There are just way too many gaps. By making this motion and approving it, what exactly is the next step? Where does that leave us? Because my intent is to say no, just because there are too many gaps.
Ms. Konecki, I'll let you help.
Sure. So at this stage, we are looking for the general site layout, intensity of uses, location and amount of open space, the general components of the plan to be fixed. From here, it would go onto the board for approval. Now, if between now and final, something about that general area plan changes substantially, I would probably direct the applicant to come back to preliminary and revise, and we'd start the process again. But hopefully, I think most of the comments that I took down tonight from the commission are things that you should direct the applicant to work on between now and final, and you will see them sufficiently addressed to your satisfaction in order to make that recommendation for final approval. I think things like building elevations, quality of material, details of the open space, the material used for the pathway along Whitmore Lake, these are all pretty minor. Adding a few more dry hydrants are pretty minor. They're not going to change the overall site development. So if you think that you have concerns that would change the overall site development, I would say to advise the applicant to revise and come back for preliminary. But if not, it's okay for preliminary approval. And then we just got to work and iron all of that out through the final approval process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Konecki, for making it clear. I didn't feel any of the conversation would impact the site, as Ms. Konecki indicated, so hence my motion. Is there any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Mr. Zarzecki, can you please call roll? Or, excuse me, a roll call vote.
All right. Ms. Chick,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
No.
Mr. Gustafson,
No.
Mr. Iaquinto,
Yes.
Ms. Infante,
No.
Mr. Roman,
Yes.
and Zarzecki, no. It fails 3 for it, 4 against.
Thank you. In that case, I'll make motion to recommend approval with conditions of the preliminary PUD plan to the Board of Trustees.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquinto. Any questions, comments on that motion? In the hopes that the conditions could be addressed more clearly for the commissioners that feel they're not comfortable approving.
Should you state the conditions that are in the reports, or just say per reports, or?
I'm sorry, I'm gonna leave it to the notes, the notation that Ms. Konecki has. There's numerous things, obviously, via the topics that we discussed tonight. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Zarzecki, can you please call a roll call vote?
Oh, hold on 1 second, please. If we're not going to make an exhaustive list of comments now, how would the applicant know? How would we know what conditions we're approving? I'm confused.
Okay, what we spoke tonight on the numerous items that were all of interest to the commission in order for the PUD to continue. So this is a preliminary site plan, PUD plan. So since we did not approve it, we're doing, my next step would be to ask for approval with conditions, the conditions being all the items that the commission discussed tonight.
Okay.
So that the applicant can address the preliminary PUD plan and come back to the planning commission. Or address those concerns and address them at the final PUD plan, correct, Ms. Konecki? I don't want to misspeak.
Yes, I would say the conditions would be to address those issues between preliminary and final if you are making a motion to approve.
Very good. Yes, that's what I'm doing. So does that help? Is that clear then?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Seeing none, Mr. Zarzecki, can you do roll call vote?
Ms. Chick,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Gustafson,
Yes.
Mr. Iaquinto,
Yes.
Ms. Infante,
Yes.
Mr. Ullman,
Yes.
Zarzecki, yes. Approved, 7-0.
I'm sorry, I muted. So with that, thank you, Mr. Gronow and Brent, for your comments regarding our questions. Moving on, approval, I'll make a motion to approve the preceding minutes from March 17th meeting and dispense with reading.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Iaquinto. Any questions, comments, or corrections on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Ms. Konecki will go final call the public. Again, a 3-minute limit per speaker.
Yes, so we'll have a final call to the public at this time using the same rules and procedures as before. So if you'd like to address the Planning Commission, please use the raise hand function. And when you're unmuted, please state your name and address before giving your comments. Okay, just took a moment, but first is David Gordon.
Hello, David Gordon, Helena Road. This might be an all-time record for the Planning Commission, 10:48 at night. I appreciate all the effort that you've put in and all the discussion that took place. It was very intelligent and useful. I was a little confused by the last motion. I guess at this point in time, you're going to continue negotiating with the developer to address the concerns that were raised. I'm kind of curious that I didn't hear anybody raise the condition of of less density which is what I heard the majority of members of the public speak to. So I certainly hope that that is one of the subjects that's discussed with the developer between now and the next meeting when he comes forward. I also think it would be wonderful if the Planning Commission would decide to ask the board possibly to send out a letter to the public and inform them what's going on here. Because if you really want participation in our small little town, people need to know what's going on. And I would believe it's incumbent on one of the public bodies to make an effort to inform the residents so that they aren't in the dark about this gigantic proposal that impacts everybody in the community. We know what happened 20 years ago when a proposal even less dense than this was approved on exactly the same piece of property, and a referendum was put before the voters. It was turned down. I think this project would be equally unpopular today if the residents knew about it. So maybe that's the reason nobody's made the effort to inform the general public. But I would encourage Janet Chick, as the member of the Planning Commission who represents the Board of Trustees, to bring this up with the board and see if they would be willing to be more than transparent, but to actually be do an outreach to the community. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, David. All right, up next is Jean.
Hello. I just want to thank everyone who's working hard for our township. I especially appreciate those planning commissioners who seem to truly and respectfully listen to this area's neighbors, the rural neighbors. And I also want to underscore the appropriateness for the Planning Commission to be proactive and publicize that this development is proposed. Much better to do that now and let people know, and then to have a really strong reaction later. As Mr. Gordon was referring to in the past, it really tore our township apart. And I would encourage all of us to be proactive here and truly transparent. And again, thank you for everybody's efforts. But let's really be open-minded to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Okay. Up next is Adam Olney.
Adam Olney, 9315 Lakewood Court. I just want to thank Mr. Gronow and the engineers for taking part in the meeting tonight, answering some difficult questions and being passionate about what he's proposing for this township. Little disappointed in some of the decisions that were made tonight by the Planning Commission. When you have information in front of you, you have a professional opinion in front of you, and it seems like many of you are still swayed by public comment and public comment of opinions. And the threat of a referendum of 20 years ago, guess what? That's not the same town as it was 20 years ago. We just had a referendum in the community, and it didn't go the way that the people put the referendum out there wanted. So if you want to collect signatures, put a referendum out there, I'm more than welcome it, and see how that turns out this time. Other than that, I look forward to seeing the changes that Mr. Gronow makes to accommodate the Planning Commission and our board and our community and move forward with this project.
Thank you, Adam.
That's fine.
Up next is Francine Dolins.
Hello, Francine Dolins, 350 North Territorial Road West, Ann Arbor. I wanted to thank the commissioners for the detailed meeting that they have held and the in-depth discussion. I am not disappointed with the decisions that were made, unlike Mr. Olney before me. I think that these are the comments that the public are giving you, the residents are giving you, are really important, because you are there to represent us, not to represent the interests of a developer or of any individual within the residents of the township, but all of us. And so those who come to this meeting to represent us and to represent our feelings are important to be listened to. That's what a democratic situation is about. So thank you very much. And I would just like to say that the density and the issues that you've raised in terms of the housing and the quality of the housing are really important to pay attention to and to continue to pay attention to. Most of the residents have voiced their opinions that they are not against development. They're just against this type of development. And so I think it's really important for the Planning Commission to continue to listen to the residents and what they're suggesting. We all want what's best for Northfield Township. We may have slightly different opinions, but I'm sure that we can come to a common finding that will be beneficial to all of us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Francine. Okay, this is the last call to any member of the public who wishes to address the Planning Commission at this time. Okay, Chair, I see no further comments.
Thank you, Ms. Konecki. We'll go to comments from commissioners. Mr. Gustafson.
No further comments.
Ms. Infante.
None, thank you.
Mr. Zarzecki.
Sorry, it's muted. No additional comments. Thank you.
Mr. Iaquinto.
No additional comments. Thank you.
Mr. Dwyer.
Thank you to all the public and the developer and his team for participating. This is the way it should be done.
Ms. Chick.
Yeah, I want to thank also the public that came to speak. Appreciate all the comments, and for the developer and his representatives that spoke as well. Especially appreciate all the work that Julie's done and Marcus, as far as bringing us a lot of good information, detailed information and facts. And just want to remind everybody that the Planning Commission has to make their decisions based on facts and good information. While we appreciate the feelings of people, we have to be objective when we make these decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no further comments. I'll announce the next regular meeting, April 21st, 2021, and make the motion to adjourn. Or by Mr. Iaquinto. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Good evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
You too, Julie.
Okay, Mary, I've stopped the recording, so we are all set to end the meeting. Have a good night.